It's strange what sticks in your memory after years of working the night shift. Not the calls you expect, not the big car accidents, the armed robberies, the screaming chaos that plays out over the phone. Those burn hot for a few hours and then fade. What stays with you are the quiet calls. The ones where nothing really happens. Or at least, nothing you can explain. It was a Tuesday night. Or maybe Wednesday. Honestly, the days blur together when you've been doing this job long enough. I remember it was late, the kind of late where your brain slows down, where the fluorescent lights in the call center feel too bright, almost unreal. We had 3 dispatchers on shift, but that night was dead silent. No calls for almost an hour. I was halfway through sipping a lukewarm coffee when my phone lit up. Unknown number. No location ping yet. Line open. I put on my headset, cleared my throat. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. At first, I thought it was a misdial. That happens a lot. Pockets pressing buttons, kids playing with phones. I listened for background noise, some clue. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Not just a faint inhale or exhale. This was close. Too close. Heavy, irregular. Like the microphone was inches from their mouth. I could hear the air dragging in, catching at the back of the throat, then spilling out slow and shaky. It was so intimate it felt wrong, like I was eavesdropping on someone sleeping, or worse. Hello, this is 911. Are you in danger? No answer. Just that breathing, sometimes quickening, sometimes pausing as if they were listening to me. I sat back in my chair, eyes flicking to the GPS screen. Still no location lock. The system was trying, but it kept spinning. Can you tell me your name? I tried again, speaking slow and clear. Nothing. I was trained to keep them talking. Even if they couldn't respond, sometimes people are too injured, too scared. You just keep your voice steady, keep them on the line until help can get there. But there was something about the way this breathing sounded. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't ragged from running. It was controlled, almost like they were breathing for me. Every inhale matched my own. Every exhale followed. When I stopped for a moment, I could hear them pause too. I swallowed, glancing at the clock on the wall. 2 minutes on the line. Sir or ma'am, if you can't speak, make a noise. Tap something. The breathing hitched slightly. Then static. It started faint, just a soft hiss under the breaths, but it grew louder like the call was straining to hold together. My headset crackled, the sound distorting, warping. Then, for a split second, I thought I heard a voice buried under the noise. Not words exactly, more like a whisper halfway formed. I leaned forward. Say that again. Please. The static rose, drowning out almost everything. All I could hear was that breathing, still perfectly in sync with mine. And then, so faint I almost missed it, something else. A click, like someone switching the phone from one ear to the other. I froze. That's not a background sound you mistake. I've done enough calls to know the difference between background noise and someone deliberately shifting their grip. They were listening, adjusting. Where are you? I asked softer this time. The breathing deepened, slow, deliberate. Finally, the GPS pinged. Just a brief flash before it vanished again. No address, just coordinates. I copied them quick before the screen reset. My stomach tightened when I saw them. It was near the river. No houses. No streetlights. Just an empty patch of dirt road I knew well. I'd driven past it dozens of times. Nothing out there but an old chain-link fence and some overgrown weeds. I typed it in and messaged the nearest patrol car. They were still 20 minutes away. Help is on the way, I told the caller, though I wasn't sure who I was reassuring, them or me. That's when the breathing changed. It was subtle at first. Shorter inhales, faster exhales like they were walking. I could hear faint crunching, gravel underfoot. I turned my chair away from the others in the room. Can you see anyone around you? I whispered. No response. Just walking. Breathing. Another burst of static. My headset popped so loudly I flinched. And then the breathing stopped. Total silence. Hello. My own voice sounded too loud in my ears. Still nothing. I checked the call timer. 5 minutes now. I could hear my own pulse in my head. Then, faintly, a sound emerged from the static. A wet inhale. Closer than before. It wasn't the same rhythm anymore. Now it was slow, deliberate dragging, like they were savoring each breath. And I realized I could hear the faint sound of my own chair squeaking, not through my ears, through the call. I froze in place. Very slowly, I looked over at my two co-workers across the room. Neither of them was on a call. Neither of them was looking at me. But the squeak came again, perfectly timed with me shifting the slightest bit in my seat. I didn't speak. I didn't move. The breathing in my ear was so close now, it felt like it was inside my own head. And then, in the faintest possible voice, I almost didn't catch it, I heard one word. Closer. I jerked in my seat, and the line went dead. The GPS never pinged again. The patrol car reached the location 20 minutes later. Nothing there. No footprints, no tire marks. I try to shake it off. Calls like that happen sometimes. Weird interference, prank calls, bad connections. You tell yourself 100 little lies so you can keep showing up for work. But that night, when I got home, I noticed something. Sitting on my kitchen table was my landline phone. It was off the hook. The receiver resting beside it, gently swaying, as if it had just been placed there to, I told myself it was nothing. That's what you do in this job. You compartmentalize. You put the strange ones in a mental drawer and slam it shut. But the breathing call wouldn't stay in that drawer. It clung to the edges of my mind, replaying at random moments. I'd be making coffee or scrolling through the call logs, and suddenly I'd hear it again. That inhale, that slow, wet exhale. The way it matched mine. 3 nights passed before it happened again. It was another dead stretch of the shift. Phone's quiet, dispatch floor half lit. My two co-workers were talking softly about weekend plans, the kind of meaningless chatter that feels louder at 2 a.m. I was scrolling through the system, clearing old incident reports when my phone lit up. Unknown number. No caller ID. No location ping. My stomach sank. I took the call. 911, what's your emergency? At first, I thought it was silent. No breathing this time, no static. Just an empty, open line. And then, a faint click. Not the kind of click from a bad connection. This was deliberate, mechanical, like a button being pressed slowly. The GPS window on my screen lit up. Finally, a location. It was an old laundromat across town, one that had been closed for almost 5 years. The roof had partially collapsed after a fire, and the whole building was condemned. I'd driven past it a dozen times. Rusted shutters, boards over the windows, graffiti scrawled across the side. I keyed the mic. Are you at the laundromat on 5th and Pine? Are you in trouble? No answer. The location blinked and changed. Now it showed the top floor of an office building, the Wilkerson Tower. I knew for a fact that floor was empty. The company that had rented it moved out last year. No furniture, no electricity. The hairs on my neck prickled. Can you speak to me? Are you moving? Nothing. The pin blinked again. This time it landed on the roof of a grocery store. I stared at it, frowning. GPS doesn't do that. Not like this. It can drift a little, sure, 10, 20 feet, maybe put you in the wrong building if you're close to a wall. But this was jumping across town, hitting impossible spots. And the line was still open. I could hear faint something, not breathing, not talking, just the kind of sound you get when a phone is pressed against fabric. Muffled, warm. I typed a quick note into the system. Caller location unstable. Multiple impossible pings. Sent it to the nearest patrol unit. The pin jumped again. This time it was inside an abandoned elementary school, one that had been boarded up for decades. My mom used to point it out when I was a kid, telling me it had mold so bad you get sick just from stepping inside. My hands were cold on the keyboard. The caller hadn't said a word, hadn't even breathed into the line like last time. But I felt the same pressure, like the silence itself was aimed at me. Another jump. Now it was a patch of road outside the city. No buildings, just cracked asphalt and a chain-link fence. The same stretch of road from the first call, near the river. My pulse spiked. I typed it into the log, sent it to the same unit. I imagined them driving there again, finding nothing again. The pin flickered once, twice, then locked. And my chest tightened when I saw the new address. It was mine, not the neighborhood, not the street, my exact apartment number. I sat there, staring at it. The icon pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. I didn't type anything, didn't tell my co-workers. I just stared at it, my mouth dry. I finally managed. Where are you calling from? My voice sounded thin, far away. The line stayed silent for a long moment. I thought maybe they'd hung up. Then, faint, almost imperceptible, a breath. Not like before. This one was faster. Closer. I felt myself leaning toward the screen, like I could pull something out of it if I got close enough. Another breath. Then a slow, deliberate whisper. Home. I jerked upright, my headset crackling with static. My own reflection in the dark monitor glass looked pale, eyes too wide. The location pin still sat on my address. I scrambled to type it into a private note. Not into the official log this time, because I didn't want the questions. I didn't want to explain why a 911 caller was somehow inside my apartment at 2 in the morning. The static grew louder, the kind that makes you want to rip the headset off. And then the pin jumped again. It landed on the dispatch center. On my workstation. I felt a deep, sick drop in my stomach. Who are you? My voice cracked. Nothing. I looked over at my co-workers. They were still chatting, oblivious. No ringing phones, no flashing lights on their consoles. This call wasn't on their screens. Just mine. The pin blinked one more time and vanished. The GPS window went blank. The line went dead. I sat there, headset still on, breathing hard into the deadline. My screen now showed only my reflection in the black monitor. Pale face, hair plastered to my forehead from sweat I hadn't noticed. I didn't log the call. I closed it out manually, leaving no trace except the scribbled note in my own pocket. For the rest of the shift, every ring of the phone made me tense. When I finally drove home that morning, the street outside my building felt wrong. Too still. Every parked car looked like it was hiding someone. When I got to my door, my hand shook putting the key in. I stood there a long time before I turned it. Everything inside looked normal, except the kitchen table. There was a sheet of paper on it I didn't remember leaving. Plain white printer paper, folded once. I almost didn't want to open it. My heart was thudding in my ears, my mouth dry. Inside, in small block letters, was one line. You're facing the wrong way. I froze, because without even thinking, I turned around. And there, through the narrow crack of my barely opened bedroom door, I swore I heard someone breathing. By the third call, I stopped pretending it was coincidence. You can tell yourself a lot of little lies in this job. That bad connections happen all the time. That GPS glitches aren't personal. That people breathe weird into the phone for all sorts of reasons. But the truth was starting to press against the back of my skull like a migraine. This caller knew me, and I didn't know them. It had been 2 nights since the pinned location incident. I hadn't told anyone. I'd thrown the folded paper from my kitchen table into the trash without reading it again, but I didn't take the garbage out. I just let it sit in the bin, like I couldn't bring myself to walk it outside in the dark. I'd slept badly. Every sound in my apartment seemed louder than it should have been. The hum of the fridge, the pipes ticking, my own breathing echoing in the silence. I kept waking up thinking I'd heard something soft. Close. When I got back to work that night, the air felt heavy. My console hummed faintly under my hands, the glow of the monitor casting shadows up the wall. The call came in at 1:42 a.m. Unknown number. No caller ID. No location. My fingers hovered over the accept key for half a second too long. Then I took it. 911. What's your emergency? Silence. Not even breathing this time. Just an open line. I kept my voice even. Can you hear me? Nothing. The GPS screen stayed blank. But the caller was still on the line. I could hear that faint hiss, the sound of a phone pressed against something. Fabric maybe, or skin. I typed into the incident log, open line. No response. The system automatically generated the blank field for caller name, number, and location. And then one of those fields filled in by itself. It was the name field, and in it, letter by letter, my own name appeared. First name, middle initial, last name, perfect spelling. I just stared at it, my stomach sinking. The system never does that. Not unless the caller says their name and the voice recognition software transcribes it. I hadn't said my name, and they hadn't spoken. I cleared the field. It filled in again. This time it added my employee ID number right after it. The 6 digits I used to log in at the start of every shift. My hand felt numb on the mouse. I glanced across the room. My coworkers were busy with their own screens. No one was looking at me. No one saw the name appear. I typed into the chat to IT support. Possible system error. Name autofill glitch. Before I could hit send, the number field filled in too. Not a phone number. My home address. Unit number. Zip code. I froze. The GPS window blinked. Coordinates appeared. My apartment. Again. And in the quiet between heartbeats, I heard it. A soft, slow inhale through the line. My throat tightened. I tried to sound calm. How do you know my name? Nothing. Just another breath. Then a faint scrape, like the mic brushing against something rough. I deleted the text to IT. I didn't want a record of this in the system. Instead, I typed a note into the call log that made it look routine. No caller voice. Possible accidental dial. GPS inconsistent. The system refreshed, and every blank field on the screen filled in at once. Not just my name and ID this time. My date of birth, my hire date, the serial number of my headset, even the emergency contact number I'd listed on my HR paperwork. All of it, sitting there in neat black text, like the caller was feeding it directly into the system. I swallowed hard. The GPS flickered. For a moment, it showed my apartment. Then it jumped, not to some random abandoned place like before, but here. The dispatch center. It zoomed into my workstation. My chair. I turned my head slow. Nothing was behind me. No one was near my desk. When I looked back, the name field on the screen had changed again. It didn't just say my name anymore. It said, "You're still facing the wrong way." My pulse pounded in my ears. My eyes darted to the dark glass of the window beside my desk. All I saw was my reflection. And for a heartbeat, I could have sworn there was a second shape behind me in the glass. I reached up and pulled my headset off. The line stayed open on the screen, timer ticking. I didn't want to hear the breathing anymore. I just sat there, headset in my lap, watching the fields on the screen change one by one. The caller name, field emptied. Then the number. Then the address. Until only one field had anything in it, notes. I hadn't typed anything, but the system had. It said, "Don't turn around until I say so." I must have been holding my breath because my chest ached. I stared at the words until they blurred. And then the line disconnected. Everything on the screen went blank. I closed the incident without saving, my fingers shaking so badly I kept hitting the wrong keys. The rest of my shift was quiet. But when I drove home, my apartment building felt different. Every darkened window seemed to be watching me. When I opened my door, the air inside was still and cold, like no one had been there in years. Except for the phone on my kitchen table. The caller ID screen was lit up, and in place of a number, it said my own name. IT was quiet. That strange, heavy kind of quiet that doesn't just sit in a room, it presses into you. I had my headset on, my eyes glued to the system display. The waveform on the screen still showed an open line. Caller connected. No voice, just breathing. I didn't even remember when I'd stopped talking. My throat was dry. My pulse in my ears made it hard to tell if the sound on the line was them or me. But I knew it wasn't me. It couldn't be. It was slower, more deliberate, like whoever was on the other end was choosing to breathe into my ear. And then it stopped. The silence felt wrong immediately. Not the same wrong as before. This one had shape, like the absence itself was leaning forward to fill the space. I sat there, fingers stiff on the keyboard, staring at the screen. And then I heard it. A whisper. At first, I thought it was just my own breath bouncing back through the line. I even shifted in my seat just to see if the mic was picking up my movement. It wasn't, because the whisper was talking. No, describing. He's sitting back now, left hand on the desk, right hand still on the mouse. My mouth went dry. My left hand was on the desk. My right hand was on the mouse. I told myself it was coincidence. Just an eerie guess. People could guess what a dispatcher was doing in the middle of a call, right? I didn't even believe that for a second. The voice was soft, careful, almost tender in the way it formed the words. He's looking at the second monitor. His eyes keep going to the corner of the screen. He's thinking about ending the call. I felt my hand slide toward the end button before I realized I was moving it. I froze, hovering there. The whisper didn't miss it. Now he stopped. He's afraid I'll notice. My entire back stiffened. My chair suddenly felt smaller. Who is this? My voice came out cracked. He's speaking now, trying to sound firm, but his voice is shaking. It was my voice. Not just the tone, but the grain of it. the little rasp I get after too much coffee. Every syllable sounded like it had come from my own mouth. Except I hadn't spoken those words. I felt my skin crawl in a way I didn't even think was real. Like every tiny hair on my body had been yanked up at once. He's reaching for the mug now. The chipped one. The one with the faded logo from the academy. I looked down. My hand was halfway to the mug before I snatched it back. The voice laughed. Not loud. Not mocking. Just quiet, like someone chuckling to themselves in a dark room. "Tell me your name," I said. It was a mistake. He's trying to trap me. He's hoping I'll slip up. But he knows my name already. He should, it's his. The room felt smaller. My headset felt heavier. I checked the call log. Caller ID, unlisted. Location. And then the name field. It wasn't blank anymore. It read, my full name. Not just my name, but my employee ID in the exact format it appeared on my personnel file. The timestamp said the field had been auto-filled. No keystrokes. No input from me. I stared at it so long I forgot to breathe until the voice whispered again. He's staring at his screen now, not blinking. His mouth is just barely open. I swallowed hard. My throat clicked in the quiet. "Where are you?" It came out as more of a plea than a question. The whisper didn't answer right away. Instead, there was the faintest sound, the kind you don't notice unless you're listening for it. A chair creaking, papers shifting, and then, he's wondering if I'm behind him. I didn't turn. Every instinct screamed at me not to. I just stared straight ahead. My reflection ghosted on the dark edges of the monitor. But the voice kept going. Now he's wondering if I'm in him. If I've always been here, waiting for him to pick up. My chest felt tight. The air in the dispatch room was suddenly too thick. I typed into the system, not for the caller, but for the record. Unknown caller, possible system beach, reported as of 3:14. The moment I hit enter, the voice sighed. Now he's trying to bring someone else into this, but there's no one else here. That was when I realized I hadn't heard another dispatcher's voice in over an hour. No radio chatter. No side conversations. Just me. I slowly reached for the console phone, planning to call the supervisor's office directly. The whisper smiled through the line. I could hear it. Now he's calling for help, pretending it'll make a difference. I dialed. It rang once. And then I heard it, not in my headset, but through the phone's receiver, my own voice. "Dispatch," it said. My exact voice. I hung up so fast the receiver nearly toppled off the cradle. The whisper was softer now. His hands are shaking. He's thinking about pulling the headset off. But he knows I'll still be here. I felt sick. Not just scared, sick. Like something inside me knew it was already too late to hang up. And then it started telling me things I hadn't done yet. He's going to look to his left now, just a glance. I didn't want to. I didn't mean to. But my eyes flicked left. The empty chair. The dark hallway beyond. Now he's going to breathe in slow, like he's testing if the air's safe. I inhaled. It smelled faintly metallic. Now he's going to reach up and touch the side of his neck. My fingers brushed my skin. It was warm. Damp. While I pulled my hand away, there was the faintest smear of red on my fingertips. The voice hummed softly. Yes, just like that. I swallowed again, but it hurt this time. But my throat was closing. Why are you doing this? I barely got the words out. The whisper paused. Then almost gently, because I like the sound of me, through you. Something in my chest turned cold. And for the first time, I wondered if I was really the one thinking my thoughts, or just repeating lines being fed to me. The line stayed open. I stayed frozen. It kept speaking. Now he's going to type something else into the system. Just a few words. So it's in the record. I didn't want to. I didn't. But my hands moved. I typed, last breath. And then I heard the faint click of the auto-logging system, time-stamping the note at 3:19. The whisper exhaled. There. Now you're mine. The line went dead. But the sound didn't leave my ears. Even now, it hasn't that I've worked night shifts at the dispatch center for almost 5 years. And still, every time the phone rings in the dead of night, I feel my stomach twist like it's bracing for something bad. That night, it was just after 2 a.m. The building was quiet in that strange, heavy way it gets after midnight. The hum of the air vents, the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. I was halfway through a stale cup of coffee reading over a noise complaint log from earlier when the next call came through. It wasn't just the usual ringtone. It felt louder, closer, like the sound was right behind me. I slid on my headset and spoke in my calmest tone. 911, what's your emergency? At first, I thought there was no one there. Just this slow, uneven breathing, like someone trying not to make a sound, but failing. I repeated myself. 911, what's going on? Can you tell me your location? Then I heard a man whisper. Someone's in the crawl space above me. His voice was tight, shaky, the kind of whisper you use when you don't want whoever's listening to know you're talking. I straightened in my chair, typing as I spoke. Sir, I need your address right now. He rattled it off quick, like he'd been waiting to say it. I entered it into the system, the map pulling up a little one-story rental home on the edge of town. The kind of place you could pass in daylight and not remember. All right, I've got your location. Where exactly are you in the house? Bedroom closet. Doors shut. I can hear them moving. I could hear him breathing into the phone. Fast, almost panicked, but he was forcing himself to keep quiet. In the background, there was another sound. A faint scraping, then something like a slow shuffle. Directly above him. Sir, I want you to stay calm. Are you alone in the house? Yes. He swallowed hard. There's no attic. Just a crawl space. I stopped typing. He was right. According to the property details on my screen, the house didn't have an attic. No stairs, no access hatch. Just a small, sealed crawl space between the ceiling and roof. Maybe 2 feet high. No reason anyone should be in there. You're sure it's above you? Not outside on the roof. No, it's inside. His whisper dropped even lower. I can hear their hands on the beams. I motioned to the officer on duty behind me, cover my mic as I mouthed, possible B&E, sealed crawl space. He frowned, picked up his radio, and started calling it in. The caller's breathing quickened. It stopped moving, he said. It's just breathing. I went silent, listening. Through the faint static of the line, I heard it too, slow, heavy breaths. Not the caller's. These were deeper, wet somehow, close enough to feel in your own chest. Okay, units are on the way. I want you to stay exactly where you are until they arrive. They're right above me, he whispered. Then I heard the sound change, like something shifting its weight, crawling forward. A beam creaked. The image that came into my head was all wrong. I picture a body dragging itself on its elbows, belly pressed to wood, moving slow. How long have you been hearing this? I asked. A few minutes. I thought it was rats at first. But rats don't whisper. My mouth went dry. They whispered to you? There was a pause. And then, so quietly I almost thought it was in my own head, I heard a voice through his phone. Not his voice. Something higher, strange, like it had learned to speak, but didn't understand words fully. It said, "Come out." The caller's breath caught. You heard that, right? Tell me you heard that. I heard it, I said, my voice lower now. Do not respond to it. Just keep quiet. Officers are close. But I wasn't sure if that was true. Dispatch times feel longer when you're the one sitting in the dark with something whispering inches above you. Sir, is there any way to leave the house without passing under that crawl space? No, it's over the whole place. It's moving again. In the background, the scraping came back. This time quicker, like it knew it was being tracked. I tried to keep my voice steady. Are you armed? No. Then just stay in that closet. Keep your phone to your ear. I watched the little clock on the dispatch console tick forward. 1 minute. 2. 3. His breathing was getting worse, shallow, shaky. They're peeling something. What do you mean? The ceiling, he whispered. They're pulling it open. I heard it. The soft air of old drywall, the light crumble of dust hitting the floor. And underneath it, a wet sound like lips parting. My officer was still talking into his radio, frowning now. I waved him over. He covered his mic. Cops can't get in. Back doors barricaded from the inside. No response at the front. I went cold. Barricaded? Sir, did you block your doors? Silence. Sir, are you there? His voice came back, but it was smaller. No, I didn't. The scrape stopped. Everything on the line went quiet except his breath. Then, 3 slow taps. Right above him. Sir, I said carefully, you need to stay. A loud crack cut through, making me flinch. The caller sucked in air. It's looking through. What is? He didn't answer right away. When he did, It was almost too soft to hear. Not a person. That was when I lost him. The call went dead. I sat there for a moment, headset still on, listening to the empty line like something might come back. My partner was already on the phone with the responding units, telling them to force entry. I pulled up the property info again, zooming in on the structure diagram. The crawl space didn't have an access point. Not inside, not outside. The only way in would have been to tear through the roof. But from his side of the call, it had sounded like it came from inside. The next update from the field came in 5 minutes later. They found the bedroom closet door still shut, and the phone, lying on the floor, screen cracked, call log open to our number. The rest of the house was empty, and in the ceiling above the closet, there was a hole about the size of a human head. Inside that hole, nothing but black. No signs of an intruder. No footprints on the roof. No debris outside. I went home at 7 a.m., but I didn't sleep, because the whole time I was replaying the call in my head. I kept thinking about one thing. That voice that told him to come out. It hadn't sounded like it was speaking through the phone. It had sounded like it was speaking into my ear that I thought about hanging up. Not because I didn't believe him, but because something about his voice, the way it trembled, the shallow rasp of his breathing, made me feel like if I kept listening too long, something would start listening back. "Sir," I whispered, my own voice instinctively lowering to match his. "You need to tell me exactly what's happening." There was a rustle, like he'd shifted the phone against his cheek. A muffled scrape of his palm over the receiver. And then, barely above the hiss of static, "She's right above me." I froze. My fingers hovered over the keys, the glow of my monitor suddenly too bright in the dim dispatch room. The air conditioner hummed softly behind me, but it might as well have been a mile away. I didn't answer him right away. I was still listening, not to him, but to the space between his words. And then I heard it. At first I thought it was just the sound of my own breathing echoing in my headset. But no, it was faint, irregular. Almost like someone was dragging themselves across a floorboard. Not walking, not crawling on hands and knees. This was slower, heavier. Something pressed against wood and shifted, like skin sticking to a surface before peeling away again. "Are you hearing it?" He whispered, like he could see me, like he knew. "Yes," I said before I could stop myself. There was a pause. Then, "She's been up there for hours." I glanced down at the address on my screen. Same as before. The one I'd already flagged as having no attic. Just a crawl space above the ceiling. And not even one you could enter from inside the house. It was sealed, painted over years ago. "Sir, I need you to stay calm. You're safe." "I'm not safe," he cut in, his voice breaking. "She's getting closer." The line went dead, quiet for a moment. I heard him shift again, maybe looking up, maybe pressing himself into the corner of whatever room he was in. And then the sound above him came again, louder now. My headset barely caught it, like something dragging its whole body weight, just a few inches at a time. "Sir, where are you in the house?" "My bedroom," he said. "North wall, by the window." I marked it down, pretending my hands weren't shaking. I radioed the responding unit without taking my eyes off the screen. "Unit 224, possible intruder, 1974, Garden Hill Road. Caller reports movement above ceiling. No attic access." "Repeat, no attic access." Static crackled back. "Copy that. ETA, 5 minutes." The caller suddenly sucked in a breath. I could almost picture him clamping a hand over his mouth. "What is it?" I asked quietly. "She stopped," he whispered. I strained to listen. He was right. The sound had gone completely still. Not faded. Not moved away. Just stopped. And then, so softly that I thought I was imagining it, came another sound. Breathing. Not his. Slow, deep inhales like lungs filling with stale air. Then long, deliberate exhales. Almost like whoever was above him was matching their breathing to his, but just a little off, a half-second behind. I didn't want to ask, but I did. "Does it sound human?" His answer was so quiet I barely caught it. "No." I looked over at the other dispatcher, 2 desks away. She was busy on her own call, eyes fixed on her monitor, unaware of the cold knot that had formed in my stomach. "Stay on the line," I told him, forcing my voice steady. "Officers are almost there." "She's listening to you," he whispered. My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" "Every time you talk, she moves. Like clockwork, The faint dragging above him came again, just a few inches, then stillness. "Can you get out of the room?" I asked. "No. If I move, she'll know where I'm going." "She already knows where you are." He didn't respond. The breathing above him grew louder. Not closer, just heavier, like whatever was up there was leaning its full weight over the exact spot where he sat. "You don't understand," he said after a moment. "It's not just above me. It's looking down at me, through the ceiling." I almost told him that wasn't possible, that even if there was some gap or weak spot in the boards, nobody could be staring right through it at him without breaking through. But the way he said it, like he could feel the weight of eyes on his skin, I didn't say anything. "Sir," I whispered, "the officers will be there any second. Just keep talking to me. Don't stop." The dragging sound came again, but this time it was sharper, like fingernails scraping lightly against wood. "She's right above me," he said again, this time not trembling, not even afraid, just certain. "She's not supposed to be here." My radio crackled. "Dispatch, Unit 2 to 4. We're on scene. Approaching the front door now." I keyed the mic. "Copy, 2 to 4. Caller's in the bedroom, north wall." The man let out a shaky sigh, but it wasn't relief. "They're too late," he said. The dragging stopped. I could hear the officers calling out in the background, their voices muffled through his phone. "Police! Call out!" Then heavy boots on hardwood. The sound was steady for a few seconds, and then the officers must have reached his hallway, because I heard one of them swear under his breath. "There's nothing here," the other said. The caller's voice came back, panicked. "She's above me right now." "Sir," one of the officers said, "there's no attic, just a crawl space, and it's sealed shut." I heard them moving around, checking the ceiling, knocking on the plaster. One of them even laughed, a short, uncomfortable sound. But I still heard the breathing, and I knew the caller did too. I thought I was prepared for silence. I wasn't. When the call ended, there was that hollow ringing in my headset, the kind that feels too loud, even though it's just nothing at all. I kept the line open for a few extra seconds, half expecting him to come back, to whisper something else. But all I had was my own breathing and the low hum of the dispatch floor. He'd said she was right above him. I didn't believe it at first, not completely. Calls come in all the time from people who think they're hearing someone in the attic, in the walls, in their yard. Mental illness, drugs, loneliness, sometimes it's all three. But this guy's voice didn't sound like that. He sounded cornered. When the unit rolled up to the address, I was already leaning forward in my chair, elbow pressed into the desk, mic hanging loose in my hand. "Unit 2 to 4, we're at scene." I pressed my thumb into transmit. "Copy, Unit 2 to 4. Advise when you have eyes on the caller." There was a pause. Too long. "Dispatch, no one's here." I frowned. "Negative, caller was confirmed at this address." "What's the status?" Static cracked before the officer came back. "We've swept the main rooms. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. House is empty." Empty. I wrote the word down automatically on my report pad, but it didn't look right in my own handwriting. "You checked the crawl space?" I asked. "Affirmative." "That's the thing, we're still hearing it." My fingers hesitated over the keyboard. "Hearing what?" The officer's voice dipped lower. "The scratching. It's coming from inside the crawl space, but there's nothing in there. No animals, no debris, just space." I glanced at my screen. The address glared back at me, plain black text against pale green. 197, Caraway Lane. "That sound. Can you patch me in?" I asked before I really thought about it. A second later, my headset filled with the faintest noise. It was hard to describe, not quite like a rat, not quite like a hand. Soft and quick. A kind of scritch-scritch, pause, scritch-scritch. Something about the pattern made my stomach tighten. It was steady, but not mechanical. It was thoughtful. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until it stopped. "Unit 2 to 4, confirm. Did you just hear?" "It's gone," the officer cut in. His voice was tighter now. "We'll do another sweep." I stared at the waveform on my console, that little green line flattening out again. The rest of the check turned up nothing. No caller. No footprints in the dust on the floorboards. Not even a spiderweb disturbed. "Advise if you get another call from this address," they said before clearing. I logged the incident, but my mind kept circling back to the sound. I'd heard mice before, squirrels, even raccoons clattering through vents. But this hadn't been clumsy. It had chosen where to move, where to stop. By the time I looked up, the shift clock read 2:17. I rubbed my eyes and rolled my neck. The air in the room felt thicker, like the ventilation had slowed down. The night pressed on with its usual weight. Drunk drivers, false alarms, one call about a neighbor's music being too loud. But underneath all of it, I kept expecting something. It came just after 3:04. The headset clicked, a tiny mechanical sound, and then I heard it. Faint. So faint I thought it might be a glitch. Scritch, scritch, pause, scritch, scritch. But it wasn't in my earpiece this time. It was above me. I froze. My eyes went to the drop ceiling, the cheap square panels sagging slightly in their metal grid. I pulled the headset away from my ears. The room sounded different without it. Quieter, but not empty. The sound was still there, still scratching. I craned my neck, scanning the panels. The logical part of my brain said it had to be a mouse. Maybe a bird had gotten in through the roof. But the longer I listened, the more my skin prickled. It was the same rhythm from the Caraway Lane call. Exact same. Hey, I turned toward Lena, the dispatcher 2 seats down. You hear that? She looked up from her monitor. Hear what? I waved upward, feeling ridiculous. This is scratching. It stopped. Lena frowned. You okay? You look pale. I swallowed and forced a laugh. Yeah, just thought I heard something. I put the headset back on and stared at the console. The cursor blinked in my incident report like it was waiting for me to finish the thought. I didn't. For the rest of the night, I kept one ear tuned to the ceiling. Sometimes I thought I heard the faintest tap, but every time I focused, it was gone, like it knew I was listening. The next day, I pulled the log for 197 Caraway Lane. The house had been sold 2 years ago to some LLC, no personal name attached. The tax record listed it as vacant, maintenance in progress. Vacant, but someone had called from there. Someone who said she was above him. The part that stuck with me was his breathing. I'd handled panic calls before, but his breathing had been careful, like he didn't want it to know he was on the phone. 2 nights later, it happened again. Different shift, quieter night. Just before 3 a.m., headset clicked, and there it was. Same sound, not in my ear, not through a line, in the ceiling. Scritch, scritch, pause, scritch, scritch. But this time, it moved. Not fast, not slow, just steady, and directly above where I sat. I swear I could feel it through the top of my skull. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back into the desk. Lena looked over. Jesus, you all right? I kept my voice low. Do you really not hear that? She shook her head. I wanted to grab the stepladder from the supply closet, push up one of those panels, and look, just to prove I wasn't losing it. But something deep in my gut told me not to. The sound stopped when I stepped toward the closet. Later, when I went to clock out, I lingered at the door. The office was empty except for the low glow of monitors in sleep mode. I waited. Nothing. I told myself it was a raccoon, or maybe the ducks shifting with the temperature drop. But my brain kept replaying the sound from the house. The same number of scratches before the pause. The same pause length, like it had memorized the pattern, like it was repeating it for me. The worst part? I think it knows when I'm listening that I thought I'd left that call behind. I thought once the line went dead, it would stay dead. It was almost an hour since the team radioed back about the empty house. They'd swept every room, checked the crawl space twice. No footprints in the dust. No sign of anyone hiding. And yet, the scratching had been there, steady as breathing. When they left, it stopped. I stayed late that night in the dispatch room, mostly because I didn't want to go home. My apartment felt too quiet lately, like the kind of quiet where you can hear your own heart too well. The office wasn't much better, fluorescent lights buzzing, old chairs squeaking when no one sat in them. But at least I wasn't alone. Or so I kept telling myself. The others had gone home by 10:30. Just me, the hum of the computer screens, and the faint static in my headset from a line I wasn't on. I kept scrolling through call logs, trying to convince myself that tonight had been a fluke. And then it happened. The line from earlier reopened. I didn't click anything, didn't answer a new call. But the call Idaho from that address, the one from the man in the crawl space, lit up on my screen. The timer started counting, just like it had before. 00:01, 00:02, 00:03. I told myself it had to be a glitch. Old software, maybe looping a ghost signal from before. But the moment I thought that, I heard it. A breath. Not a gasp. Not someone winded or afraid. Just a long, slow exhale that pushed right into my ear through the headset. County Dispatch, what's your... I didn't finish. Because the voice that spoke wasn't the man from before. It was something else. Closer than the crawl space. The words were stretched, warped, like they'd been dragged through water before reaching me. I froze, every muscle locked. My brain did that thing where it tries to find the nearest normal explanation. Maybe it's a prank, maybe some drunk kid figured out how to spoof the call, but my body knew better. My chest felt tight, and the air around me seemed heavier. Who is this? I asked. My voice cracked on the who. No answer, just the same breath. Long, patient. Then, you're still looking the wrong way. I swear my spine went ice cold. My eyes flicked to the office door, closed. No footsteps in the hall. I thought of the crawl space from earlier, the one the responders swore was empty, even though the scratching had been right there behind the wall. I thought of the silence after, the way it felt like it had followed me home in my head. What do you want? I asked. Nothing. Just the sound of the breath again. And then I realized it was matching mine. Not like someone breathing at the same pace. No, it was syncing. Each inhale I took, it inhaled. Each exhale, it exhaled. That's when I noticed something else. It wasn't just in my headset anymore. It was above me. I tilted my head back, slow, almost afraid my neck wouldn't obey. The ceiling tiles above the dispatch desk looked the same as always, stained in the corners, one of them slightly sagging from old water damage. But I swear, in the faint hum of the room, I heard it. Breathing. Not loud. Not obvious. But there. I pulled the headset off. The call timer kept going on the screen. 02:09. 02:10. 02:11. Without the headset, the voice was gone, but the sound wasn't. It was in the ceiling. I backed my chair away from the desk. The wheels squeaked loud in the empty room. I thought about leaving, just walking out and letting the night shift operator deal with it. But there was this gnawing certainty in me that if I turned my back, it would come down. Closer than the crawl space, the voice had said. I grabbed the desk phone, not the headset, just the old landline handset, and called the night sergeant. My hands were slick on the receiver. He picked up on the third ring. What's wrong? I told him I thought someone had broken in. Told him I heard them in the ceiling. I didn't mention the call, because how do you explain that without sounding unhinged? He said he'd send someone. Told me to stay put. I stayed in the middle of the room, away from the walls, away from the ceiling vents. But the breathing didn't stop. If anything, it got slower, like whoever, whatever, was up there had settled in a wait. Minutes dragged. My eyes kept darting to the call screen. The timer was past 5 minutes now, but there was no sound from the headset on the desk. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the words, until the text box at the bottom of the dispatch software lit up. Incoming message. No one had ever used that function in my time here. It was for automated relay from certain phone systems. The message read, "Turn off the light." I stared at it until my eyes burned. Another message came. IT sees you when it's bright. My skin prickled so hard it felt like needles. The breathing stopped. I don't know why that was worse. The room was dead silent, except for the low buzz of the lights overhead. My brain screamed at me not to do it, but my hand still went to the switch. When the room went dark, I expected to feel relief, like whatever was up there wouldn't be able to watch me anymore. But the second the lights went out, the breathing started again. Only now, it wasn't above me. It was right next to my ear. I stumbled back, so hard I hit the desk. My shoulder cracked against the edge, and the monitors rattled. My hand scrambled for the switch, but then I heard it. The voice again, right in the dark beside me. "You're listening better now." I don't know if I screamed. I remember my throat hurting after, but it might have just been from breathing so fast. I slammed the lights back on. Empty room. The call timer was at 9:54. Still counting. The door burst open. The sergeant and another officer. I tried to explain, but they searched the ceiling tiles, checked the vents, even went into the crawl space above the dispatch office. Nothing. The line disconnected the second they walked in. No record of the messages in the system. No recording of the voice. But the next night, when I came in for shift, the line from that house lit up again. And this time, the message appeared before I even touched my headset. Crawl spaces are just starting points. It was just past midnight when the phone rang. The kind of hour where the air feels heavier and the hum of the fluorescent light above me was louder than it had any right to be. I was halfway through my shift at the dispatch center. We don't usually get calls at that hour, at least not from kids. Domestic disputes, drunk drivers, the occasional noise complaint from someone who can't sleep. Sure. But children? Not often. The phone's ring cut through the silence, like it had been waiting for the perfect moment to interrupt. I picked up. 911. What's your emergency? For a second, all I heard was breathing. Small, shaky breaths. Then a voice, thin and unsure. There's someone outside my house. The voice was definitely a child's. A girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. I straightened in my chair, reaching for the incident log on my monitor. Okay, sweetheart. Can you tell me your name? A pause. Sophie. Hi, Sophie. Can you tell me where you live? She gave me an address. It was in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town, the kind with 2-car garages and motion sensor lights. I typed it into the system, flagging it for patrol. All right, Sophie. Can you tell me exactly what you see outside your house? Another pause, and I could hear her breathing quicken. She's standing by the tree. Who's standing by the tree? The woman. Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. It wasn't just fear, it was confusion. Okay, can you tell me what she looks like? I kept my voice calm, the way we're trained to do. She's wearing a long dress. It's dirty. And her hair, it's all messed up. She's looking at the house. She's been there a long time. The way Sophie said a long time made my skin crawl. All right, I said carefully. Is she moving at all? No, just standing there. Okay, Sophie. Are your parents home? Yes, but... Her voice dropped to a whisper. They can't see her. I froze. What do you mean they can't see her? I told them. I told them she's out there. They looked, but they said no one's there. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I've had plenty of calls from kids with active imaginations. But Sophie didn't sound like she was imagining this. Her voice was steady, like she was trying to explain something that she didn't understand herself. Where are you right now, Sophie? In my room. Upstairs. I can see her from my window. I could picture it. Small bedroom. Maybe pink curtains, toys on the floor, her little face pressed against the glass as she stared down into the yard. Okay, Sophie. I'm sending a police car to your house right now. I want you to stay on the phone with me until they get there, right? She didn't answer. Sophie. She moved. I felt my stomach tighten. Where is she now? She's closer. She's at the edge of the yard. I muted my mic and typed a priority note for the responding officer. Possible prowler. Moving toward residence. Child reports unknown woman in yard. Parents unaware. When I came back on the line, Sophie's breathing was uneven, little hitches between each inhale. It's okay, I said softly. She can't get in. You're safe inside the house. That's what my mom said. But she's looking at me. I glanced at the clock. Patrol was still at least 4 minutes out. 4 minutes is nothing, unless you're 8 years old and watching someone cross your yard. Okay, Sophie, I want you to step away from the window. Can you do that for me? There was a rustle, the sound of small feet on carpet. I'm by my bed now. Good. Is your door locked? I don't know. Can you check for me? Another pause. A soft click. It's locked. Perfect. Just stay there, Sophie. Keep talking to me. Can you tell me what your favorite color is? She didn't answer right away. Then, in a small voice, she's smiling now. I gripped the receiver tighter. You're not at the window anymore, right? No, but I can still see her. That made my skin prickle. Ow! She's taller now. I didn't understand what she meant. Taller? Like standing on something? But Sophie kept talking, her voice slow, almost dazed. Her head's by my window. I sat back, my pulse pounding in my ears. Sophie, is she inside the house? No, she said quickly. She's still outside. But she's higher now. I don't know how. I wanted to tell her it was just her imagination, that maybe she'd seen a shadow or a reflection. But I couldn't get the image out of my head. This woman rising, somehow, until her face was level with a second-story window. Sophie, can you still see her eyes? Yes. What color are they? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely audible. They're not eyes. A cold feeling crept up my spine. What do you mean? They're holes. Just dark holes. I try to keep my voice steady. Okay, Sophie. Listen to me. I want you to stay right where you are. The police are almost there. I checked the unit tracker. The patrol car had just turned onto her street. They're there, Sophie. You'll hear a knock soon. But she didn't respond. Sophie. There was a long silence, and then, very softly, she's gone. I heard voices in the background, muffled and adult. A man's voice. A woman's. Sophie telling them. I told you she was there. The line clicked, and the call ended. I sat there staring at the dead receiver, feeling like I'd just surfaced from deep water. A few minutes later, the responding officer radioed in. No sign of anyone matching Sophie's description. Yard was clear. Doors and windows secure. Parents confirmed the child had a history of nightmares. Case closed. Except, an hour later, I got another call. No caller ID this time. Just static at first. Then a small voice. She's back. I came in that night thinking I'd have an easy shift. Slow Tuesday. The kind of night where the biggest thing I'd have to deal with would be a drunk guy calling because he locked himself out. But as soon as I sat down at my console, I noticed the sticky note. It was slapped right on my headset. Big black marker. Caller. 10:47 p.m. Young girl. I frowned. Underneath, in smaller writing, it said there's a woman outside. Family can't see her. I remembered the note from last night's shift change. Not the details, just the way the writing slanted, the rushed, almost desperate style. Like the person writing, it didn't want to forget a single word. It must have been the same girl from that weird midnight call. The one they'd been talking about in the break room. The one where no one else could see what she saw. The dispatcher on before me hadn't added any follow-up info. No all clear, no officers dispatched. Just that single unsettling sentence. I sat down, put on a headset, and tried to shake it off. Sometimes kids get spooked. Sometimes they see shadows or reflections, and their imagination does the rest. It wasn't even 20 minutes into my shift when the line lit up. I answered in my usual tone. 911, what's your emergency? The voice was small, shaky. She's still there. My eyes flicked to the clock. 11:14 p.m. My heart gave this weird, uncomfortable skip. Is this? I hesitated, not wanting to scare her. The same person who called earlier tonight? Yes. She was whispering now, like she was afraid the person she was talking about could hear her. Okay, what's your name, sweetheart? Emily. I glanced at the old note again. No name, just a description of the situation. Emily, can you tell me where you are? She gave me the same address as before. Same quiet residential street, same neat little neighborhood. I typed it in for logging purposes, even though nothing had come to the last call. All right, Emily, can you tell me what's happening right now? There was this long pause. Then, slowly, like she was turning her head away from the phone to look, she said, she's standing under the streetlight, not moving. Something in her voice made my skin prickle. Who is the woman? I kept my tone calm. What does she look like? Emily swallowed audibly. She's tall, too tall. She has this black dress that looks wet. Her hair's all over her face. And her arms, Emily's voice cracked. Her arms are wrong, like they're hanging the wrong way. I typed as she spoke, my fingers slowing down over that last part. I was already picturing it in my head, even though I didn't want to. How are they wrong, Emily? They bend backward. The words landed heavy. I try to keep my voice steady. And she's been there since the last time you called? Yes. Another pause. She doesn't move until I look away. Then she's closer. I force my eyes to the screen, to the blinking call timer, so I wouldn't picture that too vividly. Emily, are your parents there with you right now? Yes, but they don't see her. They're watching TV. I kept her talking, running through the usual checklist. Was she inside? Were the doors locked? Could she get somewhere safer in the house? She said she was in her bedroom on the second floor. Her curtains were open. She could see the streetlight perfectly from her window. She's looking up here now, Emily whispered suddenly. I didn't like how fast my stomach dropped. I kept my voice low and even. Okay, Emily, I'm going to stay on the line with you. I'm sending an officer out to check. I typed in the dispatch request, feeling a little ridiculous because what exactly was I sending them for? A possible prowler that only a child could see? But something in me didn't want to take the chance. I was still mid-typing when another line lit up. It was rare for me to get two calls at once. It was even rarer for my gut to twist like it did just seeing that blinking light. I patched it through. 911. What's your emergency? This voice was older. A man. Sounded mid-30s, maybe. Breathing hard, but not panicked. I don't know how to explain this. There's a woman standing across the road from my house. Something about the way he said woman made the hair on my arms lift. I glanced back at Emily's still open line. She was breathing shallowly on the other end, waiting for me to come back. I switched over to the new caller. Okay, sir. Can you describe her for me? He hesitated. Then he said, she's tall. Too tall. Wearing some kind of black dress like it's soaked through. Hair over her face. And her arms. I felt my throat tighten. How are her arms, sir? They're bent the wrong way. Like backward at the elbows. The words hit like déjà vu. Except it wasn't déjà vu. It was the exact same description. Word for word. Sir, what's your location? I asked, already pulling up the mapping screen. He rattled off an address. I blinked. It was more than 20 miles away from Emily's. Different town. Different county, even. When did you first see her? I asked. Just now, he said. I came to lock the front door, and she was standing under the streetlight. I stared at my notes. Emily had said under the streetlight. Now this man was saying the same thing. I tried to keep my tone level, but I could feel the pulse in my neck. Is she moving? He hesitated. No, but I think she's closer than she was a second ago. My fingers hovered over the dispatch request. 2 different officers. 2 different towns. Same woman. I told him to go inside, lock his doors, stay on the phone. I went back to Emily. She was crying quietly now. She's at the bottom of the driveway. I felt like I was balancing on a wire between these 2 calls. Every time I switched between them, I got this dizzy, weightless feeling. Because their words, their timing, felt like they were somehow connected. I don't know how long I juggled the 2 of them. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 20. It's hard to keep track when your brain is split in 2. The officers I sent out to each location came back with the same report. No one was there. No footprints in the snow. No sign of anyone leaving the area. When I told Emily and the man that, they both went quiet. Not relieved, just quiet. Emily whispered, she's still here. And the man, a second later, said, she's closer. The words landed on top of each other in my headset, almost perfectly synced. I don't remember exactly what I said after that. Just that I stayed on the line with both of them until my shift ended. And that when I finally took off my headset, my neck ached from how still I'd been sitting. That was the night I started double-checking my own windows before bed. Because if 2 strangers, 20 miles apart, can see the exact same thing, then maybe she can be anywhere that... I don't remember the first thing I said when I picked up her call that night. Sometimes it's muscle memory. A greeting, my name, the standard question, what's your emergency? But with her, my mind doesn't hold the start. It's like the tape begins a second too late, already rolling in the middle of fear. Her voice was smaller this time. Not crying, not yelling, just smaller. She's inside now, the girl whispered. I don't know why I froze. I'm trained for escalation. My job is to keep people talking, keep them calm, keep them alive. But that sentence sat in my head like a stone. The line hissed softly in my ear. I heard the sound of her breath, shallow, controlled, like she was hiding under blankets or pressed into a corner. Then something else, faint, but enough to pull the hairs on my arm upright. Footsteps. They weren't rushing. They weren't stomping. They were slow, measured. A sound you could almost mistake for someone just walking around their own home. Except every step felt like it was pressing directly into my chest. Where are you right now? I asked, my voice quieter than it should have been. In my room, she said. I locked the door. Her words were so soft, I had a strain to hear. I felt myself leaning toward the phone as if it would help. Okay, good, I told her. Stay quiet. Tell me exactly what's happening. She was outside, the girl whispered. I watched her from the window. She didn't move for a long time. And then she smiled at me. My skin prickled. I didn't want her to keep talking, but I also didn't want her to stop. What happened after she smiled? She went away. Something about the way she said it was wrong. Not that the words themselves were strange, but that her tone wasn't relieved. It wasn't the voice of someone saying, I'm safe now. It was the voice of someone who had just realized safety was never there to begin with. And then, I asked. She came back, the girl said, but not outside. The footsteps were clearer now. Wooden boards, creaking just enough to give away their age. Somewhere in the background, a faint hum, maybe from the girl's small desk fan, made the space between each step feel longer than it really was. I thought about the layout of a house, any house. How close could footsteps sound if the bedroom door was shut? They shouldn't sound this close. Not unless they were in the same hallway. Do you know how she got in? I asked. I don't know, she said. I heard the front door. Her voice cracked on the word door, like she was afraid, even saying it would draw attention. Do you live alone? I already knew the answer, but I needed her to confirm. With my dad, she said. But he works nights. He's not home. I wrote that down, though my hand felt stiff, the pen heavier than usual. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, the silence was worse. I could hear the faint buzz of the line, the small click every few seconds when my headset adjusted its feed. I could hear my own breath too loud in my ears. And then the sound came again, this time sharper, like fingertips grazing the wood. She's outside my door, the girl said. I shut my eyes. I pictured her, not the woman, but the girl, in that room. I pictured her crouched by the side of her bed, clutching the phone, every muscle tense. I could feel the air in her bedroom, hot and heavy because fear makes it harder to breathe. Listen to me, I said, trying to sound calm. You need to keep quiet. Don't speak unless you have to. There was a pause, and then a faint whisper. She's not knocking. It sounded almost like she wished the woman would knock, because that would mean something normal was happening. But silence at the other side of a door meant the woman could be doing anything. Just listening, just waiting. I was already writing an urgent note for dispatch when the next sound hit me. Not a knock, not footsteps. The metallic click of a door handle turning. My stomach dropped. Is your door locked? I asked. Yes, she whispered back, but the word didn't sound like comfort. The handle turned again, harder this time. I heard it through the phone and in my head at the same time, the way certain sounds bypass your ears and go straight into your nerves. Help is coming, I told her. Stay where you are. The handle rattled once more, and then stopped. But the woman didn't walk away. The silence stretched until it didn't feel like silence anymore. I could hear the faintest sound of breathing, not hers. Deeper, slower. She's standing there, the girl whispered. She's listening. I swallowed hard. How do you know she's still there? I can hear her smiling. The words didn't make sense at first, but something about the way she said them made me understand. Not literally hearing teeth or lips, but hearing the stillness of someone who wants you to know they're enjoying this. A soft tap came through the phone. Not a knock, not even a scratch. Just one single, slow touch against the wood. She's inside my room now. The girl's voice didn't break into a scream. She didn't yell. She just said it like a fact, like someone announcing the weather. And in that moment, I didn't doubt her. Ow! I asked before I could stop myself. I don't know, she whispered. The footsteps were in the room now, softer, like the woman was barefoot. I could hear the boards bending under her weight, one at a time. Where are you right now? I asked. In the closet. I could almost feel how tight the space was. The air still. The smell of fabric and dust. The way your own breathing feels like an alarm in your ears. The woman's footsteps stopped. She's looking for me, the girl said. I wanted to tell her to be quiet, but I didn't. Because some part of me thought that if she stopped speaking, I'd lose her. The next sound I heard made my skin go cold. Not because of what it was, but because of how close it was. It was the faint creak of a door hinge. The closet door. She's here, the girl whispered. I heard the sound of fabric moving, hangers swaying, something brushing against the closet walls. And then, nothing. No scream. No noise. Just the dead silence of an open line. I kept talking to her, telling her help was coming, calling her name, but the only thing on the other end was breathing. And I couldn't tell if it was hers anymore that I don't remember breathing for a few seconds. I don't remember thinking. It was just me, the headset pressed against my ear, and the faint crackle of the line as the little girl's breathing came through. Her last words still clung to the air. She's inside now. The way she'd said it. No scream, no rush, just this tiny, shaking whisper, like she'd already accepted something terrible. I'd heard that tone before. It's the kind people use when they know they can't outrun whatever's coming. I told her to stay calm, my voice steady but my throat dry. Asked if she could get under the bed. She said no. She didn't want to move. Didn't dare move. And then came the footsteps. Slow. Muffled at first, like they were on the other side of thick carpet. But as they went on, the sound sharpened, each step dragging slightly, like one shoe was heavier than the other. I pressed the headset tighter against my ear, leaning toward the monitor, my whole focus tunneling in on those sounds. I tried to keep her talking, asked her what she saw, what she could hear besides the footsteps. But she didn't answer right away. I could hear her shifting the phone, maybe pulling the blanket tighter around her. Then she whispered again. She's looking for me. It was the way she said she that made my skin crawl. Not it. Not someone. Like she'd known this woman her whole life. Like she'd always been there. The footsteps stopped. I asked if she could still see her. There was no answer. Just this faint sound, like fingers brushing against fabric. The phone picked it up in the quiet, almost rhythmic. I thought she might be stroking the edge of her blanket, comforting herself. Then I realized the sound was too slow, too deliberate. Not a child's movement. That's when a girl breathed, barely audible. She's under the bed. A jolt went through me. I don't remember exactly what I said next, but I told her not to speak, not to move, and that help was almost there. My eyes darted to the location tracker on the screen, praying for those little green bars to mean something, to show the responding unit was already outside. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. The dispatcher beside me, Greg, wasn't even looking anymore. He'd seen enough weird calls to know when it was best not to eavesdrop. But I couldn't shake the feeling I needed him to stay close. Then the phone on my desk gave a small static pop in my earpiece. It wasn't from her end, it was from ours. I frowned, glancing at my monitor. The call waveform was steady, but in the reflection of my screen, I saw something. Not clearly at first, just a shift of dark in the glossy surface like someone passing behind me. I almost dismissed it as Greg moving in his chair. But Greg wasn't moving. And the reflection wasn't shaped like him. It was taller, narrower, shoulders pulled forward, head tilted slightly, as though listening. I blinked, leaned forward, squinting at the screen. My own pale face stared back at me, headset crooked, eyes wide, and behind that, in the blurred dark of the reflection, stood a woman. She wasn't fully visible, just the outline of her head and upper body, dark hair hanging in uneven strands, like it had been cut with a dull blade. She didn't move. My first instinct was to turn around. But something in me, some instinct I can't explain, kept me still. I didn't want to confirm it. I thought about the girl's voice, about the dragging footsteps, about the woman she said was inside. What if looking would make her real? I kept my eyes on the screen, pretending to study the dispatch map, my voice still steady as I told the girl the officers were almost there. In the reflection, the woman's head tilted further, a slow, unnatural angle, as though she'd been curious about what I'd say next. My stomach clenched, but my voice didn't crack. "Can you still see her?" I asked the girl. "Yes," she whispered. I didn't want to ask the next question, but I had to. "Where is she now?" The girl's answer came in a trembling voice. "She's behind you, too." The air in the dispatch room felt different then. Heavier. Not warmer, not colder, just thick like breathing through damp cloth. Greg finally glanced over at me, sensing something. He opened his mouth to ask, but I shook my head sharply, keeping him silent. I wanted to tell him to look at my screen, to see what I saw, but my gut told me he wouldn't. Or worse, he'd look and nothing would be there, and I'd be alone with it again. The shadow in the reflection didn't move closer. It just stayed there, behind me, its head bent toward mine as if listening to both sides of the call. I forced my eyes down to the waveform of the girl's breathing, the small jagged lines twitching in time with her tiny gasps. Then over her breathing, I heard it, a second set of breaths. Slow, deep, too close to my ear to be hers. I didn't dare pull off the headset. My whole job was to keep the line open, to keep her talking until help arrived. So I sat there breathing with it. In, out. Every time I exhaled, it seemed to inhale. Somewhere in the distance of the line, I thought I heard a knock. 3 slow raps like knuckles on wood. The girl whimpered. said it was coming from inside her closet. I told her again not to move. That help was there now. But even as I said it, my monitor showed the responding unit was still blocks away. In the reflection, the woman straightened slightly. And for the first time, I saw her face. It wasn't right. Not in the way you think. It wasn't twisted or bloody or monstrous. It was just plain. So plain it felt wrong, like a face you'd see in a dream and then forget, but deep down you'd know you'd seen it before. Her eyes, though, those I won't forget. They weren't looking at me in the reflection. They were looking at the girl. Somehow, through the call. I don't know how long I sat there like that. Me, the girl, and the woman. 3 points in a triangle that shouldn't have been connected. When the officers finally confirmed arrival, I told the girl to stay on the line. I heard their knocks at her front door, loud and urgent. She didn't answer right away, but eventually I heard her feet move, quick and light, across the floor. I didn't want to glance at the reflection again, but I did. The woman was gone. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Greg muttered something about me looking pale, but I waved him off. The officers cleared the scene. They didn't find anyone inside. Said the girl had been alone the whole time. When I disconnected the call, I finally turned in my chair, slowly, scanning the room behind me. It was empty, but when I looked back at my monitor, for a split second, I could have sworn I saw a smudge of shadow in the reflection, fading like breath on glass. And for the rest of my shift, every time I glanced at the screen, I half expected to see her there again. Watching, listening, waiting for another voice to answer why first week at the station, they stuck me in the basement. Technically, it was called archival orientation, a fancy way of saying nobody trusts you on the lines yet, so go clean the graveyard. The basement at County Dispatch wasn't the kind you see in police dramas. There were no neat rows of labeled boxes or humming servers. This one felt older, forgotten. It had the smell of damp paper and stale coffee, like someone had spilled a pot years ago and just let it sink into the floor. The air was heavier down there, too. Thicker. They handed me a clipboard, pointed toward a dented steel door at the far end of the hall, and said, "Log what's there. Throw out what's trash." I didn't even get a flashlight. I remember my sneakers sticking slightly to the floor tiles as I walked in. Rows of mismatched shelves leaned against the cinder block walls, most of them sagging under the weight of boxes. Some were neatly labeled, Incident 1989, Winter Storm 94, Training Manuals 2000 to 2005. Others were just collapsing cardboard, edges gnawed by time. At first, I treated it like a scavenger hunt. I was 19, green as hell, just excited to be here. My mom told everyone in the family that her kid worked with emergency services now, like I was some kind of hero. Truth was, I was making minimum wage filing dust. Then, I saw the box. It was shoved into the lowest shelf in the farthest corner, half hidden under a pile of old dispatch logs. The cardboard was darker than the rest. Not from age, but from grime, like it had been touched 1,000 times by dirty hands. There was no label, not even a marker scratch, just a dull rectangle sitting in shadow. When I slid it out, dust billowed up into my face, making me cough. The box was heavier than it looked. Too heavy for paper. The top wasn't taped. I lifted the flaps. Inside were cassette tapes. Dozens of them. Not the kind you'd buy at the store in the 90s with a brand logo on them. These were matte black. No stickers. No writing. Just numbers etched into the plastic with something sharp. They were in no particular order. Some were upside down, others lying sideways. At the very bottom of the box, I could see a faint outline of a handprint in the dust. I frowned, pulling one of the tapes out. It felt warm. That's when I noticed something else. Each cassette had a thin strip of masking tape over the little square where you'd normally pop out the tab to prevent recording over it. On every single one, that strip was stained dark red in the center. I told myself it was rust, or maybe ink, but I didn't believe it. I should have just logged the box, written unlabeled media on a clipboard, and shoved it back. But curiosity, that stupid, dangerous curiosity, had me carrying the thing upstairs. I asked Terry, one of the senior dispatchers, if we had anything that could play a cassette. He looked at me like I just asked where we kept the typewriters. Why? I told him I'd found something weird in the basement. He shrugged and said there was an old tape deck in the break room they used to play music during long night shifts. It took me a while to find it, buried in a cabinet behind a stack of styrofoam cups. The thing was yellowed with age, the buttons gummy from spilled soda. But when I plugged it in, the little red light blinked to life. I picked a tape at random, number 23, and slid it in. The machine whirred, slow and uneven before settling. At first, all I heard was static, then faintly a voice. It wasn't a call like the ones we took now. There was no 911, what's your emergency? Greeting, just breathing, wet, uneven breathing. Then a whisper, she's here. A pause, then louder, do you see her? I sat there, frozen, waiting for the dispatcher's voice to come through. It never did. The caller kept talking in these broken little sentences, half of them so faint I had to lean in to hear. I caught words like mirror, standing behind, don't look at her eyes. The whole time, there was a soft tapping sound in the background, like fingernails brushing against glass. The tape ended without warning, the machine clicking to a stop. I popped out, heart pounding. I told myself it was just an old prank call someone had saved for laughs. We got those sometimes. Drunks pretending there was a monster in the attic, kids giggling about ghosts. It made sense except for one thing. When I flipped the cassette over, I noticed something I hadn't before. The edge, the plastic seam, was split in one tiny spot, like it had been pried open. And inside, just visible in the gap, something pale. Not tape, not wiring. It looked like a hair. I put the cassette down and reached for another. Number 11. This one started with a woman screaming. Not the kind of scream you hear in movies, clean, sharp, easy to fake. This was guttural, ripping its way out her throat, full of panic. I felt my chest tighten as she gasped for air, then started talking so fast I could barely catch the words. They're in the walls, she kept saying. They're in the walls. I waited for the dispatcher's voice to break in, calm her down, get her location. But again, nothing. Only her, and the faint sound of scratching. I pressed stop. The room felt smaller, colder. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing in the doorway. No one was there. I told myself to put the tapes back. I'd already been upstairs too long, and the last thing I needed was to get chewed out for messing with old junk. But I didn't. I stayed there, cycling through tape after tape. Some were short, a few seconds of muffled breathing before silence. Others were long, with the caller rambling about things that didn't make sense. One man kept saying the same sentence over and over for nearly 5 minutes. The lights don't work here. Another whispered directly into the mic, but the only word I could make out was my name. That was impossible, I thought. These tapes were old, decades old, but when I rewound it and played it again, I heard it clearly. My name, drawn out, almost sung. I yanked the tape out and shoved it back in a box. My hand was shaking now. I decided I'd log the find later, maybe hand it over to the supervisor. But when I reached for the clipboard, it wasn't where I'd left it. I checked the counter, the chair, even the floor. Gone. That's when I noticed the dust. The box had left a perfect rectangle of clean surface when I'd set it down. But now there were smudges, finger-shaped smudges, leading away from the box, toward the hallway. I didn't hear anyone walk by. I didn't hear anything. The building wasn't loud on a good day, but there was always something. Phones ringing, printers humming, the low murmur of voices. Now nothing. The silence pressed in so hard it felt like my ears were ringing. I picked up the box and carried it back toward the basement. I didn't want it near me anymore. But when I reached the steel door and set the box down, the light above me flickered. For a split second, I thought I saw something reflected in the small wire glass window of the door. A woman, standing just behind me. I turned so fast, I nearly tripped over the box. No one was there. When I looked back at the reflection, it was only me. I shoved the box back onto the lowest shelf and didn't bother to push it all the way in. I didn't log it. I didn't tell anyone. But that night, lying in bed, I kept hearing that man's voice in my head, over and over. The lights don't work here. And in the dark, I realized he wasn't wrong. Because no matter how many times I blinked, my bedroom light wouldn't turn on. And in the corner, just faintly, like a smudge in the dark, I could see her. I should have just left the damn box alone. I told myself that the first night I brought it home, and I'm telling myself again now. But you know how it is. Once you open something, you can't unsee it. Or In this case, unhear it. That Monday, after my shift ended, I had the box sitting in the passenger seat of my car like it was riding shotgun. I told myself I was just going to clean it up a little, maybe donate it to the historical archive in town. It wasn't like I was planning to go through them. The tapes were heavy in that way old things feel, not the weight itself, but the age. The air around them smelled like dust and cardboard. The kind of smell that makes you sneeze, but also makes you think about people who aren't alive anymore. I didn't play one right away. Not that night. It wasn't until the next afternoon, when I got home early, that I finally gave in. I don't know why. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe curiosity. Or maybe, and I don't like admitting this, maybe I wanted to feel important. Like I'd found something no one else had. I dug out my old cassette player from the closet. It still had AA batteries inside, though they'd leaked white crust around the springs. I cleaned it off, popped in fresh ones, and picked a tape at random. The label was blank, just like the others. The hiss came first. That warm, low static. Then a faint click, like someone pressing a headset button. A woman's voice came through. She sounded calm, like she didn't yet realize she was calling about something awful. Hi. This is probably nothing, but there's a man walking around outside my house. He's, I don't know, maybe drunk, but he keeps stopping in my driveway and staring up at my window. I could hear her breathing into the phone. The dispatcher on the tape, it wasn't anyone I recognized, started asking her the usual questions. Address, description, was she alone? The woman gave an address on Willow Street. My stomach nodded. Willow Street had been in the news a few months ago because of that double homicide. The one where a woman was stabbed inside her home, and the killer was never found. I kept listening. The dispatcher told her to lock her doors and stay on the line. She agreed, and then, in this tiny voice, she whispered, "He's closer now." "Oh my God!" He's smiling at me. The line went quiet for a second. Then there was this sound, not yelling, not even a scream, just this wet, choking noise, followed by the clatter of the phone hitting the floor. The tape clicked off right after. I just sat there with my thumb hovering over the stop button. I knew that case. I'd read the reports. That call had never been part of the record. Not in the system. Not in the news. Not anywhere. And yet, there it was. On a tape in my living room. I told myself maybe it was just an old, unlogged case. Maybe the file had gotten lost. But there was this other thought, quiet but sharp, digging in at the back of my mind. That murder hadn't happened when the call was made. It had happened years later. I shoved the tape back in a box, and I should have stopped. I really should have. But I didn't. The next one I played was different. It was a man's voice, raspy, out of breath. I could hear wind howling around him. Yeah, there's Jesus, it's coming down hard. There's a pileup on Highway 9. At least 6 cars. People are hurt bad. One guy's stuck. Oh God, I can't, his voice cracked. I can't get to him. His head. He stopped. The dispatcher's voice came in, calm, professional. She asked if emergency crews were already there. He said no. He said it had just happened. The thing is, I knew Highway 9. I drove it to work, and I remembered the pileup he was talking about. Everyone in town did. It was all over the news last winter. 6 dead, including a kid. But the call I was hearing, that voice, that panic, had been made 8 years before that wreck even happened. I checked the date on the case log. No match. It wasn't in there. It had never been in there. My mouth went dry. I started pacing the room, holding the player in my hand like it might burn me. I kept looking at the box, thinking, how many more? How far ahead did these go? I don't know why I kept going. Curiosity, yeah, but also this sinking need to know how deep it went. Like pulling at a loose thread in your shirt and realizing the whole thing might come apart. The third tape was the worst. At first, it didn't even sound like an emergency. A kid's voice came on. He couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. "Hi," he said softly. My mom's not waking up." The dispatcher asked his name. He said it was Jeremy. She asked where he lived, and he gave an address I knew too well. It was my address, the one I live in now. My chest tightened. The dispatcher's tone changed, more urgent now. She asked if he'd tried shaking her, calling her name. He said he had. "She's still breathing, but I think she's sick. She's making noises." The kid started crying. Not loud, just this quiet, gasping sob. Then he said something that made every hair on my body stand up. There's someone knocking at the door. I think it's for me. I hit pause. I couldn't breathe. When I finally hit play again, the line was just silent. Then came this slow, heavy knock. 3 times. And then nothing. The tape ended. I sat there staring at the player. I don't have kids. I live alone. But that voice, I can't explain it, but there was something about it. Something in the way he said certain words. Like he sounded just a little bit like me. I turned off the player and shoved it, along with the tapes, back into the box. I pushed the whole thing into the corner of the room and left it there. But that night, I couldn't stop hearing the knocks. Not in my head, I mean outside. On my actual door. Every time I checked, no one was there. It went on for hours. By morning, the knocks had stopped. I told myself I'd imagined it, that I'd let the tapes get into my head. I even laughed about it in the shower, shaking my head at how jumpy I'd gotten. But when I stepped out, dripping water onto the mat, I noticed something by my front door. A cassette tape. Just one. No box. No dust. The label said only one word. In thick, black ink. Tomorrow. I didn't sleep the night after listening to the tapes. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear them. The voices that shouldn't have existed, describing fires and break-ins and accidents that hadn't even happened yet. Not just minutes or hours before the fact, but years before. I kept replaying one call in my head. The one with the boy who said his parents hadn't met yet. That was when I started thinking maybe the tapes weren't just strange, maybe they were impossible. I told myself I wasn't going to touch them again. I put the box back in the storage room, slammed the lock shut, and tried to forget about it. But it's hard to forget something that feels like it's still calling you, like it's sitting in the back of your mind, waiting for you to answer. It was around 2 a.m. when I caved. The night shift was quiet, just me in the dispatch room, humming fluorescent lights overhead, the faint smell of burnt coffee lingering from the pot I'd left on since 10. My supervisor was asleep in the break room, a blanket pulled up over his head. Nobody would know. I told myself it was for documentation purposes, that I'd listen to one more tape, jot down what was on it, maybe run a cross-check with old case logs. That was the lie I used to make it easier. I went back into storage, flashlight beam cutting across the dusty shelves, the metal of the filing cabinets cold under my hand as I passed. The box was still where I'd left it. No signs it had been moved, but somehow it still felt like it had been waiting for me. I brought it into the dispatch room and set it next to the tape deck. The cassettes were all unmarked, except for a number scratched faintly into the plastic and pen. Messy, almost illegible. This one said number 14. I pushed it into the player. The machine gave that familiar soft click, and the tape began to spin. There was static at first, then the faint sound of ringing. 1, 2, 3, then a voice. 911. What's your emergency? I froze. The voice was mine. Not just similar, not just close enough to mistake it in the background noise. It was my exact voice, down to the rhythm of my breathing, the slight rasp I get in the middle of the night. I leaned forward, pressing my hand against the table like it would hold me steady. The caller's voice came in, shaky. Female, late 20s maybe. I don't know what to do, she said. He's outside my window. He's not moving, but he's looking right at me. And then me. Can you see what he looks like? The sound of the caller's breathing picked up. Tall. Thin. He's wearing a hood. I can't see his face. What's your address? I asked on the tape. She gave it without hesitation, and my blood went cold. I knew that address. It was in a residential area just off County Line Road, a place I'd driven by 100 times on my way home. Then, on the recording, I said, "Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. Help is on the way." The call went on for another minute, the woman whispering that the figure was still there, that he hadn't blinked or moved, not even once. Then she screamed. The sound cut through me so sharply that I actually flinched, pulling the headphones half off my ears. There was a loud bang, with splintering, maybe a door being kicked in, and then nothing but muffled chaos. My own voice shouting instructions I couldn't even remember saying. The call ended with the sound of a distant siren. I just sat there for a long time, staring at the tape deck like it had done something wrong, like it had just accused me of crime. I'd never taken that call. I was sure of it. I went to the computer, pulling up the CAD system to check for any incident reports at that address. Nothing. No break-ins, no disturbance calls. But it was the next night when everything broke apart. The shift was dead quiet again, no calls for hours. I'd been sipping lukewarm coffee, fighting to keep my eyes open, when the phone rang. 911. What's your emergency? I said automatically. There was a pause on the other end. A shaky breath. I don't know what to do, the woman's voice said. And I froze. It was her. The same voice from the tape. Same tone. Same tremor. Word for word. He's outside my window, she said. He's not moving, but he's looking right at me. My hand tightened around the receiver. This wasn't a replay. This was happening live. I forced myself to speak, my throat dry. Can you see what he looks like? Tall. Thin. He's wearing a hood. I can't see his face. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear myself say, "What's your address?" She gave it again. The same one. And I realized I was now living the call I'd already heard myself take. I could feel my breathing quicken, matching the exact cadence I'd heard on the tape. Every word felt pre-written, like I was just reciting a script I'd already performed without ever knowing the lines. Part of me wanted to change something, to throw it off, to break whatever loop I was in, but my mouth just didn't. I said the same thing as before. "Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. Help is on the way." The next moments dragged on in a haze. She whispered about the figures still staring, unmoving. And then the scream. Exactly the same pitch, the same length, like it had been copied and pasted from the tape into real life. The crash followed, with splintering. But this time, instead of sirens fading in, the line went dead. I called it in immediately, dispatching units. The clock on my screen read 2:17 a.m. I sat there, waiting for the officers to respond over the radio, to tell me what happened. But the minutes passed. Nothing. Finally, 23 minutes later, a voice crackled over the air. "Unit 12 on scene. Control, there's nothing here. House is dark. Looks vacant. No signs of forced entry." I told them to double-check the address. They confirmed it. When they came back again, their tone was uneasy. "Control, this house looks abandoned, like it hasn't been lived in for years." I didn't know what to say. The call had been live. I'd heard her. I'd heard the crash. But there was no one there. No one to save. The rest of the shift passed in a kind of fog. I didn't tell my supervisor. Didn't log the call. I just sat there, trying to hold myself together until the clock hit 6 a.m. But when I got home, I couldn't shake it. The idea that maybe the tape hadn't been predicting the call. Maybe it had been making it happen. That night, I went back to the station early. I told myself I just needed to check the box again, to see if there was another tape with my voice on it. And there was. This one had no number, just a deep scratch running across the label where writing might have been. I played it. It started the same way, ringing, then me answering. But this time, my voice sounded different. Weaker, like I'd been crying. And the caller? The caller was me. I don't know why I kept going. By then, I should have burned the tapes or locked them away or just walked out. But something in me needed to hear the last one. The box was lighter now, only one tape rattling at the bottom. The label was smeared, like it had been rubbed over again and again until the ink bled into the paper. I could still make out the number 27. It felt different in my hand. Warmer, almost like it had been sitting in the sun, even though the storage room was cold enough to make my breath fog. I brought it back to the console and slid it in. The machine clicked, the reels began to turn, and that same low hiss filled my ears. For a moment, there was nothing, just the hum of dead air. And then my voice. Not a voice like mine, not a close match. My voice. The exact timbre, the same shallow breaths I take when I'm trying to stay calm on a tense call. The little rise in pitch at the end of sentences. 911, what's your emergency? I froze. My hand hovered over the pause button. I'd taken hundreds of calls in this job, but the second I heard that recording, I knew I had never said those words in that order. Not on that day. Not in that tone. A man's voice came through, shaky, like he was speaking while moving. I'm at. His voice cut for a second, like the signal dipped. Then came back. Think someone's inside. I can hear them. There. The tape popped, skipping a fraction of a second. I leaned closer. Sir, are you in a safe location? My own voice asked. I felt the hairs rise along my arms. I could picture myself saying it, but I never had. I'm in the kitchen. They've been knocking on all the doors. Not like normal knocking. It's slow, like they're waiting for me to answer. On the tape, I said, "Stay where you are. Help is on the way." And that was when I noticed something that turned my stomach inside out. The date scribbled on the inside flap of the tape case. Tomorrow's date. I pushed back from the desk. I didn't want to hear more, but the reels kept spinning. The man kept talking, whispering now. It's closer. The knocking. It's at the tape cut into a shriek of static. I thought it had jammed, but then the noise faded and it was just my voice again, lower this time. Almost trembling. "Sir, do you hear that?" A pause. Then, "Yeah, it's at the window now." I gripped the edge of the console. The way he said it, like the knocking had moved without sound, made me feel like something was right behind me. On the tape, I took a slow breath. "Stay on the line. Don't move." Then silence. Not just quiet. That awful, heavy silence you get when the power's out in the middle of the night. When the air itself feels wrong. And then came it. A knocking sound. 3 slow knocks. But the sound, it didn't feel like part of the recording. It sounded like it was in a room. I ripped the headphones off, heart pounding. But the knocking was still there. 3 more knocks. Soft. Deliberate. Coming from the hallway outside my office. I stared at the door. It was shut. No one was scheduled to be here except me. The tape was still running. I put the headphones back on, hands shaking. On the tape, I heard myself say, "Sir, they're at my door now." My breath hitched. I wasn't the caller anymore. I was the target. The man on the other end didn't answer. Or maybe the tape didn't catch it. Knocking again, perfectly in sync with what I was hearing in real life. My chest was so tight, I could barely breathe. On the tape, my voice was quieter. "Sir, I don't understand. How did you know my name?" Static swallowed the reply, if there was one. Another knock. Closer this time. I pulled the headphones off again. "Hello." I called out. My voice cracked. No answer. The air in the office felt thick, like the temperature had dropped. I should have left right then. I should have gotten up, walked out, and never looked back. But I didn't. I turned back to the console, because part of me, some stupid, desperate part, needed to hear how it ended. On the tape, my voice came back, trembling now. "I can see." Click. It stopped. Not like it ran out of tape. Not like it was damaged. Just stopped. I stared at the reels. They weren't moving. And then, 3 knocks. Right behind me. I turned so fast my chair nearly tipped. The office door was still shut, but the metal handle was moving. Just enough to make the faintest creak. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. The sound stopped. I stood up slow. My knees felt weak, like they weren't going to hold me. I walked toward the door, each step echoing in my ears. My hand reached for the knob, and there it was. One final knock. This one wasn't slow. It wasn't patient. It was sharp, like whoever, or whatever, was out there had gotten tired of waiting. I didn't open it. I backed away, staring at the door like it would burst open any second. The room felt smaller now, like the walls were leaning in. I glanced back at the console. The tape was still in there, the reels frozen mid-turn. I thought about taking it out, but I couldn't make myself move closer to it. The knocking didn't come again, but I knew, whatever it was, it hadn't left. I sat back down in my chair, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. And I just listened, to nothing, to the heavy silence, to the feeling that at any second, I'd hear that knock again. And maybe next time, I'd hear my own voice on the other side of the door. That IT was a little after 2 a.m. when the call came in. The board had been dead quiet for over 40 minutes. Just me, the low hum of the monitors, and that dry fluorescent buzz in the ceiling that I kept telling myself I'd stop noticing. Night shifts at the dispatch center have this hollow quality. You start to feel like the building is floating in its own little pocket of time. Like whatever happens outside is far away and not entirely real. I've been sitting there, half reading an old paperback, half listening for the next crackle on my headset. My coffee was cold, but I was too tired to care. Then the phone lit up. Line 3. No caller ID. I hit the button, settle my voice into the usual calm tone. "County Dispatch, what's your emergency?" At first, I thought the line was dead. There was only faint static, that softest you get when someone's breathing too quietly into the mic. Then I heard it. My voice. "Hey, you need to hang up. Right now." I froze, my thumb hovering over the mute button like my body just reacted before my brain caught up. It wasn't just that the voice sounded like mine. It was mine. My cadence. My slight rasp from the coffee and lack of sleep. The same low pitch I use when I'm trying not to wake the neighbors. "Hello," I said slowly, like maybe this was a recording playing back to me somehow. There was a pause. Then, "Don't talk. Just listen. They're already on their way." I had this weird split second where my brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was some prank. Maybe one of the guys in the back was messing with the system. But the longer I listened, the more I realized it wasn't pre-recorded. The breaths, the subtle hesitations, they were live. I kept my voice steady. "Who's on their way?" The voice, my voice, answered not who. "What? And they know you've been warned now." I swallowed, glanced at the empty hall outside the glass window. No movement, just that long stretch of dim carpet and the vending machine's green glow at the end. "You've got the wrong person," I said. That's when it laughed. Soft, short, like it found something I'd said amusing in a tired, pitying way. "No," it said, "you've got the wrong person." I didn't know what to say to that. I glanced at the call timer. 0:42. Not even a minute yet. "You're going to hear a knock," the voice said. "Don't answer it." The hairs on my arms stood up so fast it felt like my skin was electric. "Why would there be a knock?" I asked, my voice a little sharper now. "It's not a door you've seen before," it said, still calm, still me. "It won't sound like a door you've heard before. And it won't be for you, not yet." My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed dust. "Who are you?" I asked. "You know," it said, and I swear I could hear a faint smile in it. My own faint smile. "You just haven't admitted it yet." I glanced at the back wall of the dispatch room. The big analog clock above the cabinets read 2:07 a.m. I want to hang up, but every instinct told me I needed to keep them talking, find the source, report it to IT later. But the voice didn't wait for me. "It's important you don't speak to the next one who calls. Not directly." "Why not? They'll sound like me too," it said. "But they won't be me. They'll tell you something you'll want to believe. You can't believe them." It was so strange, hearing my own tone deliver warnings I didn't understand, like reading a diary entry you didn't write. "What will they tell me?" I asked. The line went dead. No static fade, no click. Just silence. I sat there staring at the monitor, half expecting the waveform to flicker back to life. It didn't. I logged the call, tagged it for review, wrote possible spoof in the notes, and tried to push out of my head. Except I couldn't. The whole room felt off, like the lights were a shade too dim or the air was too still. I tried to focus on paperwork, anything to shake the feeling. But 10 minutes later, another call came in. Line 2. The number was local this time. I answered with the same trained tone. "County Dispatch. What's your emergency?" Silence again. Then, "Don't listen to the last one." My skin prickled instantly. It wasn't the same voice. It was still mine, but not mine. The rhythm was slightly wrong. The pauses too long. Like someone had learned how to imitate me, but couldn't quite make the words sit naturally. "They're not here to help you," it said. "They're here to replace you." I forced a laugh, even though my chest felt tight. This is some elaborate prank. "You know I can trace these calls, right?" "That's what they want you to do," it said, the corners of its tone curling upward in that same not-quite-right smile. "Every call you log, every word you repeat, you make the copy sharper." The copy. I don't know why that word hit me harder than the rest. "Who is this?" I said again, but my voice cracked halfway through. "It's me," it said too quickly. "The real me. The one they didn't finish. You have to stop answering." The call timer read 0:53 when the line dropped. I didn't log it. I just sat there staring at the empty hallway, feeling like something had already stepped inside the building without opening a door. The next hour was a blur. I kept glancing at the phone, waiting for it to light up again. It didn't, until I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Not from the entrance, not from the break room, from somewhere inside the wall to my right. I didn't move for a solid minute. Just listened. The knocks didn't repeat. I thought about what the first voice said. "It won't sound like a door you've heard before." And they were right. It didn't sound like wood, or metal, or anything I could place. It was hollow but deep, like knocking on a thick shell. I should have gotten up, checked the wall, called security. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the beige paint and feeling like if I breathed too loudly, whatever had knocked would hear me. At 3:11 a.m., the phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But habit is a hard thing to break in this job. County dispatch. The voice cut me off. My voice. You shouldn't have picked up. Boo. They're closer now. My mouth went dry. What's closer? You know, it said. And it sounded tired. More tired than I've ever heard myself sound. When they knock again, you'll see where the door is. Don't open it. Even if you hear me on the other side. The line went silent again. I sat there, not breathing, feeling every creak in the building press against my skin. The clock read 3:15 a.m. when I finally wrote a note on a sticky pad and shoved it under my keyboard. If I'm not here, don't answer line 2. I don't know why I wrote it. I don't know who I thought would see it. I just knew that when a knock came again, I wasn't going to move. And I wasn't going to speak that I thought the first call was just a glitch. Some weird, freak moment the phone lines had decided to play with me. But it didn't stop there. It was a Thursday night, the dead kind of night, where the room feels too big and the clock feels too slow. Dispatch is always quieter after midnight. Calls get sparse, voices get tired, and the air smells faintly of burnt coffee from the pot that's been sitting there for hours. I was scrolling through incident logs, half bored, half hoping the night would just end, when line 3 lit up. The green button pulsed on the console, steady and calm. I put my headset back on. 911, what's your emergency? Silence. At first, I thought the caller hadn't heard me. Then my own voice answered. Please listen to me. You need to hang up right now. It wasn't similar. It was identical. Same pitch, same tired rasp in the throat, same exact tone I had used when answering. I felt my stomach knot. What? I said because it's all I could say. I don't have time to explain, my voice told me. There's someone on another line, and they'll call you in about 10 seconds. Don't answer them. They're not. The line cut out. Just a dead click, like someone had hung up in a hurry. Before I could even take the headset off, line 1 lit up, and at the same exact moment, so did line 4. 2 calls. Same time. That never happens. Even during storms or pileups, the timing is off by at least a few seconds. But these two came in precisely together, like synchronized signals. I hesitated. You're not supposed to ignore incoming calls. Every second could be someone's life. But that voice from seconds ago, my voice kept echoing in my head. Don't answer them. My hand hovered over the console. The lines kept flashing. Finally, I gave in and clicked line 1. 911. What's your emergency? A man's voice came through, urgent and shaking. Thank God. You picked up. Listen to me. There's someone pretending to be me on another line. They're going to say I'm lying, but you can't believe them. I'm the real one. I opened my mouth to speak, but my monitor flashed. Line 4 connected. That's not supposed to happen. You can't connect to 2 active lines at once. I heard my own voice again in my other ear, bleeding through the headset. Don't listen to him. He's trying to replace me. I'm the real caller. For a few seconds, I didn't breathe. 2 voices, one panicked man, one perfect copy of me, talking over each other, both try to pull me in. Dispatch. You have to believe me. The man on line 1 was begging. I called because he's going to say something about me, about this call. My own voice on line 4 interrupted. He's rehearsed it. Don't trust him. He's already gotten to others. I could hear the man's breathing pick up. He was panicked, frantic. Don't you hear it? Don't you hear the copy? That's not you. That's... But the other voice, my voice, was calm. Too calm. He's doing this because he's unstable. You can hear it in his breathing. He's going to tell you I'm lying. I'm not. He's dangerous. I wanted to hang up both calls. I wanted to rip the headset off and pretend none of this was happening. But my training kept me locked in my chair, heart pounding, mouth dry. Where are you calling from? I asked the man on line 1, trying to focus on something real. He rattled off an address. My screen stayed blank. No such address existed in the county. He's making it up, my other voice said smoothly. He's from out of the area. He doesn't belong here. That's how it starts. The man shouted over him. No. I live here. I've always lived here. Don't you remember me? Remember him? I didn't even know him. And yet a flicker of something pulled at me. A memory I couldn't place. My other voice seemed to sense it. He'll try to get you to doubt yourself. That's how it works. They make you question what's real until you're easy to replace. Replace. I whispered. Both calls went silent. Not static, not a click. Just total silence. Like both lines were holding their breath. Then a man spoke, almost a whisper. Ask him what happened on May 14th. My voice on line 4 immediately said, "Don't answer that." "Go ahead," the man pressed. "Ask him. If he's really you, he'll know." I didn't want to. Every part of me felt like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't step back from. But the words slipped out before I could stop them. "What happened on May 14th? The pause on line 4 was too long. Then my voice replied, "Nothing. It was just a regular day." The man on line 1 let out a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "He doesn't know. He doesn't know because that's the day you..." Both calls cut out. The lines went dead at the same instant. I sat there, headset still on, listening to nothing. The air in the dispatch room felt heavier, thicker. My monitors showed no missed calls, no record of lines 1 or 4 ever having been active. But when I looked at the incident log, a new entry was there. 2 calls, logged at the exact same second. Both labeled under my operator ID. Both marked origin unknown. And in the notes section, a single sentence I hadn't typed. "Stop answering. I don't know exactly what time it happened." My memory says somewhere around 2 in the morning, but lately my memory feels unreliable. Like maybe it's been rewriting itself when I'm not looking. I've been on shift since 10. Nights are usually quiet except for the occasional drunk driver call or domestic disturbance. That night had been busier. We'd had the parallel calls earlier, 2 identical voices on 2 separate lines, both swearing the other was fake. I tried to file the incident into my report system, but something in the back of my mind kept delaying me. I didn't even want to look at the call logs. I didn't want to see if there was some technical explanation, because if there wasn't, then I'd have to face what it meant. So instead, I sat there, picking at the peeling corner of the desk laminate, listening to the faint hum of the fluorescent lights, trying to act like nothing was wrong. The dispatcher floor was dim. Night shift keeps the lights low, so our eyes adjust to the glow of the monitors. We each have our little island of light, just the soft green and blue of the console screens, the blinking red of active lines. I was in position D4, 3 seats from the far wall, my usual spot. The clock in the top corner of my main screen read 2:07 a.m. I leaned back, cracked my knuckles, and was about to type up my report when it happened. The screen went black. Not like a power outage, everything else stayed on. The desk lamp, the overhead lights, the phone panel, even the side monitors. Just the main dispatch console. For a second, I thought maybe I'd hit some wrong key combination. I reached for the mouse. Moved it. Nothing. Then, in small white letters against the black, words appeared. "Session terminated." My stomach tightened. That's not a normal message. Usually, if you get logged out, it just takes you back to the sign-in prompt. This wasn't that. The line status lights blinked once, all of them, in unison. I could still hear faint voices from the other dispatchers. Normal calls were happening all around me. But my console was dead. The text disappeared. Another message took its place. User A. Collier. Access reassigned. That's my name. For a second, I couldn't move. The words felt heavy, like they weren't just on the screen. They were in the air around me. Access reassigned. I typed on the keyboard. Nothing. I reached for the login button on the touchscreen. Frozen. Then the system did something I've never seen before. The black screen dissolved into a new display. Not mine. It was the active screen of another station. Lines were open. Caller notes were mid-typed. But the name in the top right corner said, Employee A. Collier, Station D7. D7. That's 6 seats away. The far corner. I turned my head toward it before I even realized I was moving. The station was occupied. From where I sat, I couldn't see their face. Just the glow of their monitor and the outline of a headset over their hair. Shoulders hunched forward in the exact same posture I knew I had. Their hands moved across the keys in a rhythm I recognized, because it was mine. Even from here, I could tell. I couldn't hear them talking. Just a quiet, patient typing. I looked back at my dead console. The feed from D7 was still streaming on my screen. Whatever they typed appeared here too, word for word. My name sat there in the corner of both screens. My employee ID number. I felt an almost childish urge to stand up right then, to walk over and say, "Hey, that's my station. That's my login." But the part of me that's worked this job long enough, the part that knows what panic does to people, told me to stay still. Instead, I picked up my phone panel, called over to the supervisor's desk. Sarah," I said, keeping my voice level. "My console just locked me out. It's saying my access was reassigned." She sounded distracted. "Reboot it. Probably a sync glitch." "No," I said. It's showing my session on D7. Someone's logged in as me." "Pause. That's impossible," she said. "D7's not even." Her voice cut off. I turned again. Sarah was looking toward D7, squinting. "Who's on D7? She called out. The figure didn't turn, just kept typing. The line lights on my frozen screen blinked. 2 calls answered at once. Both labeled active. Both under my name. Sarah got up, started walking that way. I watched her slow down halfway there, then stop. "Alex," she said. The figure paused. Not slowly, not quickly, just a clean, deliberate pause. Then they turned their head, but only slightly, just enough that I could see a slice of their face. It was mine. I swear to God, it was my face. My mouth. My hair tucked behind my ear in the way I do when the headset gets in the way. But the expression, it was wrong. Not angry, not smiling, just still. Too still. Sarah didn't move closer. She took one small step back. The figure turned back to the screen and resumed typing. Then the feed on my monitor cut to black. Session closed. I looked up, and D7 was empty. No chair pulled out. No headset lying on the desk. Just an idle screen and a blinking cursor. Sarah walked over to it. I could hear her keys jangling in her pocket. She leaned down, tapped the keyboard. "Station's locked," she said. Her voice didn't have that brisk tone supervisors usually use. It was flat. When she came back, she didn't look at me. She just told me to reboot my console and log back in. I did. It worked this time. But when I pulled up the call history, the entries from that brief takeover weren't there. No logs. No caller IDs. Just a gap. 15 minutes missing. You'd think that would be the end of it. Just some glitch in the system, something IT could shrug at and say, "Oh yeah, we've seen that before." But the next night, it happened again. Not the same way, though. This time, it didn't start with a black screen. It started with my own call. I was mid-sentence, taking details from a man reporting a break-in, when my headset cut to silence. Not static, just dead air. I pulled it away from my ear. Checked the panel. The call was still active. Timer still running. Then in my other ear, the desk phone speaker, I heard my voice. "Okay, sir, and can you confirm the address?" I froze. It was me. The same tone, same pacing. But I wasn't talking. The desk speaker isn't supposed to be live unless I press it. I didn't. I slowly reached toward it, and the voice kept going. "The suspect is still inside. Can you see them?" I looked at my console. The call Idaho matched. Same line number. Same caller. But my mouth was shut. The man's voice answered, faint on the speaker. "Yes, he's right there. Oh God, he's looking at me." "Okay, sir," my voice said. "Calm. Stay where you are. Don't move." My hands were sweating. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to rip the headset off. But instead, I pressed the speaker button. The sound stopped. Dead silence again. Then the screen flickered. Session terminated. User A. Collier. Access reassigned. I know what you're probably thinking. Some software bug. Maybe the system duplicated my login or something. That's what I told myself too, until the third time. That night, I didn't even try to file reports. I just sat there waiting, watching the clock. Every time I heard the faint click of a call connecting, my chest tightened. And then, 2:07 a.m., exactly the black screen. Only this time, there was no reassignment message. No feed from another station. Instead, a single line of text appeared. "Do not log back in." I stared at it for what felt like a minute. Maybe longer. Then it changed. "Stay off the line." The cursor blinked twice. Then the screen went back to the normal login prompt. I didn't touch it. I sat there with my hands in my lap, trying not to breathe too loudly. Around me, the other dispatchers kept working. I could hear the rise and fall of their voices, the clack of their keyboards. But under it all, faint and steady, I could hear something else. Typing. From D. 7. I don't think I've ever been this tired in my life. Not just physically tired, but drained. Hollow. Like someone's been quietly scooping pieces of me out all night. It's almost the end of my shift. I've been counting down the minutes on the clock in the corner of my screen, watching the numbers crawl towards 0 like they're mocking me. Usually, by now, there's a kind of relief in the air at the call center. That little lift in people's voices when they realize they're about to be free. But not tonight. Tonight, the room feels muted, like everyone's afraid to make sound. I keep my headset on, even though no one's called in the last 20 minutes. My fingers hover above the keyboard. I'm not doing anything, just pretending to work so I don't have to look at anyone. Every time I glance at the far end of the floor, I catch sight of that empty workstation, the one they reassigned earlier to the other me. It still has the login screen up, still says my name. I told myself I'd stop staring at it, but it's hard when it feels like it's staring back. The clock reads 11:58 p.m. 2 more minutes. I just need to make it to midnight. Then I can clock out, walk to my car, and try to sleep this night out of existence. That's when my headset chirps. Not the usual ringtone for an incoming call, just a click, like someone's already there. I don't want to answer it. Every muscle in my body is screaming at me not to. But the thing about this job is you can't ignore a line once it's open. So I take a breath, push the button, and say the usual. 911, what's your emergency? At first, nothing. Just a faint hum of an open line. Then breathing. Not fast. Not panicked. Just slow, steady breaths like someone sitting perfectly still. Listening. I clear my throat. Hello? Can you hear me? The breathing doesn't change. If anything, it sounds closer now. I glance up at the status display on my screen. It says the call's coming from internal. That's not possible. No one inside the building calls through the emergency line. My voice is tight. If you can hear me, say something. And then the other voice says, I'm here now. It's my voice. Not kind of like mine. Not close enough to be creepy. It is mine. My mouth goes dry. My hand's still on the push to talk, but I don't say anything. I just sit there, heart pounding in my ears, waiting for them to, I don't know, laugh, explain, hang up. Instead, they just breathe. The clock on my monitor clicks over to 12 a.m. shift over. But the call's still open. I slowly pull my headset away from my ear, just enough that the mic won't pick up my voice. I look around the room. No one else is wearing their headset anymore. Half the desks are empty. But when I turn toward that workstation at the far end, the monitor isn't showing the login screen anymore. It's showing my dispatch interface. And the status line at the bottom says, Connected, active call. I shouldn't, but I push my mic back up to my mouth. What do you want? There's a pause on the line, long enough that I think they're gone. Then the breathing shifts, like whoever it is just leaning closer. I hear the faint creak of a chair, the whisper of fabric moving, and I realize that's our chairs. That sound is from here, from this room. I rip the headset off, but I can still hear it faintly from the earpiece lying on the desk. That steady, patient breathing. I don't log off. I don't shut anything down. I just stand and walk fast toward the exit. But when I pass the empty workstation, the chair is turned slightly. Not the way it's been all night. It's angled toward me. And for just a second, I swear I see the headset there shift, like someone just set it down. I don't look twice. I shove through the doors, down the hallway, out into the cold night air. By the time I get to my car, my hands are shaking so badly I drop my keys. Twice. When I finally get inside, I slam the locks down, grip the steering wheel, and just sit. It's over. The shift's over. That's what I keep telling myself. But when I reach up to take off my own headset, it's not there. The night shift was always the quietest. Not peaceful quiet, just empty. Like the world outside the dispatch room had already gone to sleep and forgotten about us. The fluorescent lights above me hummed in that way they always did. Not loud, but enough to feel like a headache starting. I had a coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago. I didn't even bother microwaving it anymore. We were just 3 people that night. Me, Marie, and Todd. I'd worked with them long enough to know their patterns. Marie kept her eyes on the screens, but her mind in another city. Todd, he tried to hide his boredom with dumb jokes. I didn't have the energy to laugh. It was 2:13 a.m. when the call came in. It cut through the silence sharp. The shrill little beep in my headset like a needle pressing against my ear. I took it without thinking, the way you grab a ringing phone at home without expecting anything unusual. 911, what's your emergency? The voice on the other end was male, mid-30s maybe, quick breaths between words. There's a fire. My house is on fire. I'm at 409 Maple. My wife's inside. She can't, he coughed like smoke was in his throat. She can't get out. I was already typing, sending it to the fire department as he spoke. Sir, is the fire in one room or the whole house? It's spreading. Please. I can't. His voice broke. I can't get to her. I asked him the routine questions. Gas lines, pets, exits, but half the time people don't really hear you. He was panicked, and I could hear, faint in the background, the dull roar of flames. The line went dead before I could tell him help was coming. But that happens sometimes. Either they panic and hang up, or the phone gets dropped, or worse. We dispatched the call, logged the time, 2:13 a.m. 15 minutes later, the call came again. Same beep. Same weightless moment before the voice. 911, what's your emergency? There's a fire. My house is on fire. I'm at 409 Maple. My wife's inside. She can't. The exact same tone. The same cough. The same stumble on the word can't. At first, I thought maybe the system had reconnected me to a recording of the first call. That happens rarely. Technical hiccups. But then I heard the faint background noise again. Not static. Not replayed audio. Real breathing. Sir, I said, my voice sharper now. We've already sent help. Are you still inside the house? He didn't answer my question. It's spreading. Please. I can't get to her. Exactly the same. Every syllable. Every break in his voice. It was like listening to a tape that could breathe. Marie glanced at me from her desk, frowning. She could see the look on my face, the kind of rigid stillness where your hands don't quite know if they should keep typing. I played along. Sir, I need you to tell me where you are in the house. Nothing. Just the repetition. She can't get out. The line clicked off. The timestamp said 2:28 a.m. Weird, but fine. Probably a glitch. Maybe a prank. People have done worse at 2 a.m. We didn't talk about it until it happened again. At 2:43 a.m., the beep hit my ear and the voice came through like it had never stopped. There's a fire. My house is on fire. I'm at 409 Maple. My wife's inside. She can't. I felt my throat tighten. This wasn't a repeat call. Not in the usual sense. Every detail, his breathing, the faint rumble of the fire, the slight rasp when he said, please, it all sounded like it was being performed the same way, in real time, over and over. I didn't respond right away. I just listened. And this time, I heard something new. It was quiet under his voice. Too quiet for most people to notice. But I've been doing this job for 6 years. I've heard every kind of sound bleed through a phone line. Underneath the crackle of the flames. I heard something else. Not the wife. Not a scream. It was more like whispering. Not words I could make out, but a kind of low, rushed murmur. It wasn't coming from the man. It was behind him. The hair on my arms stood up. I swallowed and spoke into the mic. Sir, is there someone else with you? Nothing. Just a repeat. She can't get out. I think that was the moment it really hit me. This wasn't just a technical error. This was something wrong. By 3 a.m., we'd had the same call 5 times. Same man. Same fire. Same exact words. Todd started cracking jokes about ghost callers, but he wasn't laughing by the 4th time. Marie wouldn't even pick up her headset anymore. She said it didn't feel right. I kept taking them. I don't know why. Maybe because I thought if I kept listening, I'd catch something different. Some clue. Some reason. By the 6th call, my hands were shaking before I even pressed the button. There's a fire. My house is on fire. I interrupted him. Who's whispering? He didn't stop talking. Didn't even stutter. The whispering under his voice was louder now. It wasn't fast anymore. It was drawn out like each word was deliberate, but I still couldn't make them out. I thought about muting my mic and asking Marie to trace the call, but part of me didn't want to know where it was coming from. By 3:17 a.m., I realized something. If this was really happening, if there was a real fire at 409 Maple, the house would be long gone by now. The wife, if she was even real, would be dead. The man too. And yet, he kept calling. We never got any updates from the fire department. No confirmation. Nothing. I asked Marie to check the system for any logs from earlier that night. She typed for a minute and looked up at me. "There is number 409 Maple," she said. She was right. The street existed. The number didn't. The next call came in at 3:28 a.m. I didn't answer it. I just let it ring until it timed out. But when the ringing stopped, I could still hear breathing in my headset. Slow, heavy, too close to the mic. And then, the whisper, right in my ear, that I don't remember how long I stared at the blinking light on the phone before I picked it up. It wasn't unusual for a call to come in right after another. Nights could go from dead silent to nonstop chaos in seconds. But the time, that's what got me. 15 minutes. Exactly 15 minutes after the last one. I'd even glanced at the wall clock above the entryway when the first call ended. 1:42 a.m. Now it was 1:57, and the same line was flashing. "County Dispatch, what's your emergency?" I said, already expecting something routine. A man's voice answered, sharp and panicked. "There's a fire. It's in my kitchen. Please, it's spreading fast. I can't put it out." My stomach tightened. It was the same voice, the same tone, the same strain in his breathing. "Sir, is this—" I started, but he kept going. "It's in the curtains. It's climbing up the wall. God, please hurry." I froze. Those were the same words he used before. Word for word. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe it was a recording. A prank. But when I looked at my call log, the first call was still there. Same number. Same address. "Sir, are you still at 128 Finnan Road?" I asked. "Yes. Yes." Oh God, his voice cracked just like before. Then there was the faint sound of glass breaking in the background. The exact same sound I'd heard 15 minutes ago. I hung on to protocol like it was a lifeline. "Units are already on the way, sir." "No. No one's here yet. Please." The rest was identical. Every pause. Every cough. Even the way he screamed when something, maybe a beam, collapsed. And when the line went dead, the silence that followed was unbearable. Because I knew how it ended. I'd already heard it. When I checked the incident board, my heart pounded harder. The unit that had responded earlier was still marked as scene secure. They'd been there. They'd cleared the call. The fire was out. I even called them on the radio. "Unit 3 to 14, status on Fenton Road." A burst of static, then, "All clear. Minor damage. No injuries." I didn't tell them what just happened, because I didn't have the words for it yet. It happened again 30 minutes later. Same call. Same man. Same impossible panic. I didn't even speak at first. I just listened, and every single second matched. I thought I could hear the faint click of a lighter at the start, just before his first plea for help. I thought I could time it out, maybe say something before he got to the part about the curtains. But my voice felt stuck in my throat. Like if I interrupted, something worse might happen. Like the whole thing was fragile. I let it play out, right to the last static pop when the call cut off. By 3 a.m., it wasn't just me. Shannon, the other dispatcher on duty, picked up a line 2 seats away. I saw her face pale before she even spoke. She mouthed something to me. It's the same guy. Her call matched mine. Perfectly. We sat there listening to 2 separate phone lines carrying the same man's desperate voice in sync. When both ended, we just stared at each other. Neither of us moved for a long time. The 4th time, I tried to break it. The second he said, "There's a fire," I jumped in. "I know. We've been here before. This already happened." Silence. For a second, I thought maybe I'd done it. Maybe I'd broken the loop. Then he spoke again, the same words as always. "It's in the curtains. It's climbing up the wall. God, please hurry." Like I hadn't said anything at all. Like my voice didn't exist in his world. By dawn, we'd logged 7 identical calls. The strangest part wasn't the repetition. It was the timing. Exactly 15 minutes apart. Not 14. Not 16. 15 on the dot. I started counting down in my head after each one ended. It was like waiting for a bomb to go off. And when the phone rang right on schedule, the sound made my skin crawl. We tried everything. Tracing the call. Running the number through the system. Calling it back. Every time, we got the same result. Number not in service. I even called the fire station that handled the first incident. The captain swore they'd been there, put out a small kitchen fire, and left. The homeowner had been shaken, but alive. When I asked if they checked on him since, There was a pause. Then he said, "We drove by an hour ago. House is fine. Dark. No sign of anyone." That's when the other calls started. Not just a fire. A woman screaming that her husband was having a heart attack. A teenager whispering that someone was breaking in through the back door. A truck driver saying he'd swerved off the road into a ditch. All of them calls we'd taken before. All of them playing out exactly the same. Same words. Same sounds in the background. Same timing. They weren't random. Each one repeated exactly 15 minutes after the first. Like the whole night was stacking in layers. By 4 a.m., the board was a mess of duplicate incident reports. We didn't even know which ones were real anymore. Officers and medics were radioing in, confused, saying they'd already cleared scenes we were sending them to again. One EMT crew told me they'd responded twice to the same address. Once to find a man unconscious on the kitchen floor, and again to find him already gone, covered with a sheet. They swore the second call came after they'd left the scene the first time. I started to feel it then. Not just fear, something else. Like the night was folding in on itself. Like we were trapped inside a pattern that didn't care if it made sense. And the worst part was the clock. No matter how many calls we took, how much chaos filled the room, the wall clock ticked toward the next 15-minute mark like nothing else mattered. The man from Finnan Road called again at 4:57 a.m. Seventh time. I didn't even ask questions. I just listened. When the beam collapsed, I heard something I hadn't noticed before. A faint whisper under the crash. Too low to make out. But when I played back the recording later, my skin went cold. Because the whisper wasn't part of the fire scene. It was saying my name. I stopped answering after that. I couldn't. The others handled it, their faces pale and tight, avoiding each other's eyes. The noise in a room was unbearable. Phones ringing, voices overlapping, the hiss of static from the radios. It all felt like one sound, stretched and warped until it made my teeth ache. And every time a line lit up, I caught myself counting without meaning to. 14 minutes. 14 and a half. 14:55. At exactly 5:12 a.m., the fire call came in for the 10th time. Shannon answered. I could see her mouth moving with the man's words, perfectly in sync, like she'd memorized them. She didn't even bother typing. When she hung up, she just sat there with her hands in her lap. Then she said, "What if it never stops?" The thing is, it didn't stop. It's been 3 nights now. Different shifts, same calls. Every 15 minutes. We've stopped sending units to half of them. Some aren't even logging the duplicates anymore. But the phones still ring. The voices still speak. And sometimes, I swear I hear the whisper again. Not just in the fire calls. In all of them. And every time, it says my name a little clearer that I didn't notice the clocks at first. I wish I could say I did, that I saw it right away and understood what it meant, but no. It took me hours. And by then, I think it was already too late. The night started like it always did. The fluorescent hum above my desk. The faint smell of burned coffee drifting from the break room. The stale quiet between calls, where you can almost convince yourself nothing bad is happening anywhere. Then the phone rang. It was a woman's voice, shaky, fast, almost out of breath. She kept saying there was someone outside her house, standing in the yard, staring at her through the window. I could hear the faint tick of a wall clock in her living room between her breaths. Tick, tick, tick. I dispatched a unit. They got there, cleared the area, no one in sight. She thanked me. Call ended. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same woman. Same words. Same fear in her voice. I thought maybe she'd seen someone again, so I dispatched another unit. Same result. Nobody there. It wasn't until the third time, word for word, breath for breath, that I realized something was wrong. It was the same call. Not just a similar call, it was identical. Every inflection in her voice. Every pause. The exact way she said, "He's not moving, he's just looking at me." I knew because I'd already heard it. Twice. And the ticking in the background. I remember looking toward the clock on our wall then. 3:07 a.m. The hands hadn't moved since my shift started. I thought maybe the battery died, but when I checked my watch, it also said 3:07. And so did the clock by the coffee machine. And the one above the back exit. All of them. 3:07 a.m. My stomach felt cold, like I'd swallowed ice. I picked up the phone again. Another call. It was a man this time, screaming about a fire in his basement. Same thing. We sent help. They found nothing. He hung up. 5 minutes later, the same man. Same words. Same screams. Same distant crackle in the background that wasn't really fire at all. I remember sitting there, staring at the blinking light on the console, my hand frozen above the receiver. The calls weren't coming in from the outside. They were replaying, like a tape stuck on loop. I looked at my screen, expecting to see timestamps, phone numbers, anything to make sense of it, but all the logs just stopped. There was a gap where the time should have been. Nothing after 3:07. I tried asking Marcy. She was the only other dispatcher in the room that night, if she was noticing it too. But she didn't even look up from her console. She just said, "It's busy tonight, huh?" Busy. That's not what I'd call the same two calls over and over. I started writing them down in my notebook, thinking maybe I could prove it to myself later. Each time a call came in, I'd jot down a few lines, who it was, what they said, what I heard in the background. It was all the same, like I was being made to relive the same 10 minutes forever. At some point, I don't remember how long in, I realized my coffee was still hot. Steam curling up from the paper cup. I've been sipping it between calls without noticing, but it hadn't cooled at all. My headset felt heavier. My own breathing sounded too loud in my ears. I started hearing little noises under the calls, things I was sure weren't there before. Like whispers, low, almost a vibration, too faint to make out, but they were there, buried under the screams, under the pleas for help. The more I listened, the more I thought they were saying my name. It made me afraid to answer the next call. But I had to. That's my job. When I picked up, it was the woman again, the one with the man outside her house. But this time, before she spoke, there was a pause. Like she knew I was listening differently now. Then, very softly, she said, "You can't leave." The rest of the call played out like before, word for word. I almost dropped the receiver. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I looked over at Marcy again. She was typing something, face lit by the dull blue glow of her screen. Her clock, right above her head, still said 3:07. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and just wasn't saying anything. I stood up, telling her I needed a bathroom break. She didn't respond. The hallway felt longer than it should have. The emergency exit sign flickered overhead, buzzing faintly. I kept glancing at my watch. 3:07, every time. In the bathroom, the wall clock matched. 3:07. I stayed there for a while, just staring at my own reflection. The air felt heavier, like I was breathing in something thick. When I went back, the phone was already ringing again. This time, it was a different call. A young boy, maybe 8 or 9, crying, saying his mom wouldn't wake up. I could hear a TV in the background, some old sitcom laugh track. We sent an ambulance. They arrived, said the mother was fine, just asleep on the couch. But 5 minutes later, the same boy, same words, same crying, same laugh track. I wrote it down, added it to the others. By the end of the hour, or what should have been an hour, I had 7 distinct calls, all looping. No new ones, just the same voices over and over. I started to think maybe it wasn't just the clocks that were frozen. Maybe we were. When I finally got the courage to ask Marcy again, she didn't answer. Just kept typing, her fingers moving in slow, steady rhythm. I leaned closer to see what she was writing. It wasn't dispatch notes. It was my name, over and over, page after page. I backed away, so fast my chair tipped over. She didn't look up, didn't even blink. The phone rang again. I didn't want to answer. Every muscle in me told me not to, but my hand moved anyway. It was the man with the fire this time. Only the whispers underneath were louder now. I could hear them more clearly. "Stay with us." And then, faintly, almost like a smile in the sound, "It's always 3:07 here." The call ended, and the phone rang again. That I used to think the worst part of night shift was the waiting. That empty stretch between 3 and 6 a.m. where nothing really happens, where you're just listening to the hum of the lights and the occasional hiss of static from the radio. But now I know that's not true. The worst part is when the night never ends. It was supposed to be morning. I knew it was supposed to be morning because my body was begging for it. My eyelids heavy, my shoulders aching, that familiar weight pressing down on me after 8 hours of sitting in this chair. But when I looked up at the clock, it still said 3:07 a.m., just like it had for her. I don't know how long. The others noticed it too. Joey was leaning back in his chair, rubbing his eyes, his headset still crooked over one ear. "Sun's late," he muttered, his voice flat. I didn't say anything because I'd already been staring at the windows for a while. They were just black squares like someone had taken a can of paint to the glass. Not a single streetlight outside, not even the glow from the parking lot. It had been like that for hours or days. I didn't know anymore. The calls were still coming in. That was the strangest part. If it had just been the clocks or the dark outside, maybe we could have told ourselves it was a power glitch or a long storm. But the phones wouldn't stop ringing, and every single one was familiar. The screaming woman from last night, her voice breaking as she begged for someone to make them leave. The old man coughing into the receiver, asking for help finding his wife who had stepped out into the fog. The kid whispering that there was someone in his room who looked like him. They came in the same order, the same words, the same pauses, over and over. At first we answered them like normal. I mean, what else were we supposed to do? But by the fourth time I heard that kid's whisper, I didn't even write anything down. I just sat there, listening, mouthing his words along with him. It was like hearing a song you hated on repeat, but it wasn't music. It was people trapped in their own moments of panic. Frozen. Like us. By whatever day this was, the room smelled stale. We had a vending machine in the corner, but no one had touched it since. I don't know. There was no hunger, no thirst, just this hollow ache that came from not sleeping, but somehow not being able to collapse either. Joey had stopped answering his console entirely. He just sat with his eyes half closed, muttering under his breath. I caught him whispering the call scripts to himself, word for word, like a prayer he didn't want to say. Renee had unplugged her headset at some point. She was sitting on the floor by the wall, hugging her knees, staring at the black window. "Morning's late," she kept saying. Her voice was light, like she was talking about a bus schedule. Then, softer. "What if it's not coming?" I didn't have an answer. Tom didn't move, but my thoughts did. At first, I kept wondering when the sun would rise. Then I started wondering if the sun even existed anymore. The darkness outside wasn't normal night dark. It was heavy. When I pressed my face close to the glass, I couldn't even see the reflection of my own eyes. Just nothing. Like the building was floating in a void. The phones would ring, and I'd answer, but the voices were starting to blend together. Sometimes I thought I could hear my own voice coming through the line, slightly delayed, like an echo. One call still got to me, though. It was the one from the woman whispering about footsteps in her hallway. I'd heard her dozens of times now, but this time, I swear she paused longer than usual. Her breathing was shallow, almost like she was trying not to cry. And then, right before the line cut out, she said something new. "They're waiting for the dark to finish." I don't know why, but it made my chest tighten. Like she wasn't just talking about herself. Like she meant us. I stopped answering calls after that. The voices kept looping, but now I was listening for changes. Little shifts. Tiny cracks in the repetition. Sometimes they happened. A laugh where there hadn't been one before. A cough that came too early. A voice calling my name. Once during the kids' call, I whispered, "I hear you too." There was silence on the other end, longer than usual, and then the sound of someone breathing right into my ear. Not the kid, not the same tone, lower. It said, "Then you know." I slammed the phone down. Joey didn't even look at me. We stopped speaking to each other not long after. It was like we were conserving something, words, maybe, or sanity. There was no point in asking how long it had been. We all knew there was no answer. At some point, Renee lay down on the floor and closed her eyes. I thought she might be asleep, but when I knelt down beside her, I saw her lips moving. I leaned closer. She was counting. Not seconds. Not minutes. Just numbers. Up and up without stopping. Her voice was hoarse. When I touched her shoulder, she flinched like she'd forgotten I was real. I asked what she was counting. She said days. I didn't ask how many. The worst part wasn't the darkness or the calls. It was that part of me was starting to believe this was all there was. No shift change. No sunrise. No morning. Just this endless loop of voices frozen in their fear and us frozen in ours. I think that's why I did what I did next. There's a door at the back of the dispatch floor. It's marked emergency exit, but I've never seen it used. Policy says we keep it locked, but when I turned the handle, it opened without resistance. The hallway beyond it was darker than the room behind me, if that was possible. No hum of lights. No ear vents. Just stillness. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me, and I couldn't hear the phones anymore. No voices. No Joey. No Renee. I took one step forward, then another. The air was thick like breathing through cloth. I thought maybe there'd be a staircase or another door, but the hallway just kept going. Straight. Narrow. Like it was guiding me somewhere. After what felt like minutes or hours, I saw it. A glow. Not warm like sunlight, but cold, pale. I walked toward it, and the closer I got, the more I realized it wasn't light at all. It was a clock, hanging in the middle of the hallway. Not on a wall, just suspended there like it had grown out of the air. Its hands were stuck at 3:07. I reached for it. My fingers brushed the glass, and I swear it was warm. Then, from behind me, I heard the phone start ringing again. Not from the dispatch floor, from the hallway. I turned, and there they were. Rows of phones on desks that hadn't been there before. Each one lit up, each one ringing. I didn't want to answer. God, I didn't. But I walked to the nearest one, lifted the receiver, and put it to my ear. It was my voice, calling in, saying I was trapped in the dark, begging for someone to tell me when morning would come. I hung up. When I turned back toward the clock, it was gone. The hallway was just black again. I don't know how I got back to my desk. 1 second I was standing there in the dark, and the next I was in my chair, headset on, with the hum of the lights above me. The clock on the wall said 3:07. Joey was gone. Renee was gone. The phones kept ringing. I think maybe I'm the only one left now. And I'm starting to wonder if morning is just a thing we made up. A promise we told ourselves so we wouldn't be afraid of the dark. But I'm afraid anyway, because deep down I know the truth. The sun isn't late. It's never coming.